let us know when we're ready.
I missed something.
Nope, just being patient.
It's a virtue. It's a virtue. It might be a virtue.
We're all set? All right, then I'm going to go ahead and call us to order and invite everyone to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Good evening. Is there a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
So moved. Matscata.
Thank you, Meg. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Tim. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. On tonight's consent agenda, we have approval of the November 12th, 2024 Board of Education Special Joint Meeting Minutes and approval of the November 12th, 2024 Board of Education Regular Meeting Minutes. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Matscata.
Thank you, Meg. Is there a second? Seconded by Sarah. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Audience of citizens. Do we have anyone with us this evening in person who wishes to address the board at this point in time? Is there anybody online who wishes to address the board? Sure. Yep. Okay, and there'll be another opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting. This evening, we do not have a Portland Public Schools spotlight lined up, so we'll look forward to the next one in January. Then we'll move on to item number 7. Oh, this got moved up.
Hey, how did that happen? That was under new business. Interesting.
Aha, okay. Well, we are going to move on to the Yale Child Study Research Proposal.
All right, so why don't I introduce Kate, who will introduce our presenters tonight. So we've been approached by some researchers from Yale and asked for consideration to participate in a research study. On a couple of notes. We have a board policy that requires board approval if any of our students are going to participate in research, and we didn't include that policy 5156. This proposal so far has been vetted by the curriculum committee, the policy committee, and now it's coming to the full board tonight for a presentation. We're not going to ask you to take action on it tonight. Tonight's an opportunity for you to get information, learn about the study. We'll bring it back on the January agenda as an action item. And of course, between then and now, if you have any questions or would otherwise like to refer it back to curriculum or policy for anything, we can do that. But we want to make sure that you have all of the information and then plenty of time to digest that information to make an informed decision. My feelings about this are twofold. First, as professionals, we are supposed to be making research-informed decisions, right? We don't just do things because they feel right. We try to do things in a way that reflects best practices in current research. Therefore, if we're going to make research-based and research-informed decisions, we sort of owe it to the broader community to help the researchers conduct the analysis necessary to inform those decisions, right? So I think it's important. I value research, I value investigation, I value empirical evidence, and I trust that there are very smart researchers in institutions of higher education and other agencies that are trying to gather information to make sure that we are able to make informed decisions that guide our practice. So this is an opportunity for Portland to participate in a study that hopefully will ground research-based decisions for current and future educators. That's why I think it was an important opportunity, and I would love for you to consider it. Specifically, the topic of the research is to investigate how we can best create Tier 1 social and emotional learning programming for the high school. I can tell you as a longtime high school principal, I haven't seen a lot of great stuff out there, right? A lot of the really good research-based social and emotional learning programming kind of taps out somewhere around 5th or 6th grade. I haven't seen really good things extend into the middle school, and certainly not at the high school level. My experience with the high school level in designing advisory programs and selecting developmentally appropriate, interesting, engaging, and enriching experiences that touch on those social and emotional learning concepts at the high school level, there's not a lot of great stuff out there. I'm hopeful that maybe if we participate in this and those researchers design these programs, they will start to, articulate a scope and sequence that extends beyond the developmental level at pre-K through, I think age 4 or 4th grade is generally where it starts to get a little gray in terms of what's out there. So with that said, what we're asking for you to do tonight is hear the proposal, think about it, reflect on it, ask any questions tonight, or ruminate on it over the coming weeks. And if you're prepared to take action on it tonight, that's okay too, but otherwise we can bring it back in January, and between now and January answer any questions you have about the study that's being proposed tonight. Fair enough?
Mm-hmm.
So we're not to ask questions tonight?
No, you can ask questions tonight, and then, of course, if there are questions that you have after tonight, you might leave tonight and think, oh, I didn't get a chance to.
Can I clarify one thing
Sure.
before we start? Because you mentioned that the policy requires that the board approve anything involving a study for the students. But the policy, I think, also says that the Board of Education and the parents need to approve it. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah.
Or did we leave that part?
So I've got here, we can just read it. So all requests for the services of student volunteers and research projects, special studies, and surveys not part of the regular education program must have parent, superintendent of schools, and Board of Education approval.
Right, but when I looked at the materials there, and I want to give you up front a chance to address it, so we don't have to wait, I just can't wait that long.
Yeah.
What was shared with us is an opt-out form. So that would seem to contemplate that parents might receive this, there might not be a thorough explanation of it, they would just, just by default, it's going to roll forward. And parents aren't really going to understand at the level that the board might, and the administration might, what the impact is and what all the elements are. So I would just want, you don't have to answer it now, but I will at one point, want to understand better how we are, or are we seeking to avoid getting a approval from parents versus just a non-response means we go forward.
Sounds like a great front-loaded question.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the policy
And I
number also?
also,
It's in the packet.
Oh,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
It's
mentioned
not in
that,
here, but it's on
the draft.
It's online.
It's on
Yep.
the drive.
you mentioned that,
Just
research should be performed based on, so what did we do as a Portland school systems to say that we even need social emotional learning? Did we do some type of analysis before we do this research to say that we're in need of it? I mean, where is that empirical data?
Okay, I'll let Kate introduce it.
Okay.
So I think let me reframe your question, then maybe that will come up. Otherwise, I think I can give an answer to it.
Okay.
Have we done any types of surveys or gathered empirical evidence to determine whether our students would benefit from a Tier 1 social and emotional learning curriculum? We work with kids every day. I have plenty of anecdotal data, and I think that any teacher that works with students will tell you the value of helping students regulate emotions, develop executive functioning skills, manage time, develop dispositions towards learning that reflect social and emotional well-being. Would tell you that it's a good idea to help kids develop those skills. And I know Sarah will tell you, especially in our specialized programs that are more clinical in nature, we do an awful lot of work with students in the area of social, emotional, and behavioral health. Do I have specific survey data for that, or any kind of quantitative data that we've taken out of surveys or looked at, gathered feedback of a quantitative nature? I do not.
Okay. And then, just for clarification, are we currently doing social emotional learning? Is that what you had said for pre-K through 4?
We
today?
do social and emotional learning with our lessons with our students, yes.
Okay.
With all of our students.
It's all of our students.
Yeah.
Part of our Tier
Okay.
1
Okay.
programming.
And I think it's important to clarify that SEL is a newish name for it maybe, but
Right.
this is education that's been happening in public schools probably as long as public schools have existed, helping kids understand their emotions and be able to self-regulate in a classroom scenario. That's not new. But I would like to maybe pause on this and welcome Kate and give you the chance to introduce this.
Sure, absolutely. So thank you, board members, for inviting us tonight to share what we think will be a very positive opportunity for the students at Portland High School. I can begin by front-loading some of those questions. Tim, Mrs. McGarry will address your question about the opt-out versus the opt-in part of the survey, and Yale has already assured us that they can customize that to whatever the requirements are of the district.
It would say opt-in then. It
Opt-in.
would make it clear that the student wouldn't be involved in it unless the parent gave.
It's something that we
Application.
absolutely could do if it just sometimes puts at risk the number of, it's very hard to get people to answer a survey.
Well, yeah.
But yes.
And we shouldn't rely on that to engage students in experimental research. The
Correct.
parent might miss that or might procrastinate on it and not do it. And I just think we should all have eyes wide open.
100%. And participating in the study is different than accessing the curriculum.
Right.
Two different items.
Right.
And to your point, Angela, as far as the why, is that it was legislatively mandated in 2021 that all schools develop social emotional curriculums, pre-K through 12, and standards were developed, and I'm going to test my memory now and have to put my glasses on. Standards were developed for grades 4 through 12 on the components of social, emotional, and intellectual habits for grades 4 through 12.
Thank you.
And so that's a legislative mandate. It's also articulated in our new school climate policy, where we talk about the school climate should base curriculum instruction, student supports, and interventions on scientific research and grounding in cognitive, social, emotional, and psychological theories of youth development. So those are the two places that it kind of lives in our policies and processes. What I'd like to start with is that I hope the board knows that as a faculty and staff, we're always looking for the best and most effective programs and opportunities for our students. This summer, through a principals community of practice that I participate in, I had the opportunity to learn about the Ruler SEL curriculum and the related study being funded by Yale to measure its efficacy. I echo Dr. Britton's comments about some of the shortcomings of current SEL programming for high school kids. Oftentimes I hear it's a little babyish and it doesn't seem real, it doesn't seem authentic. And so we're always on the lookout for something better. Our current SEL program is named School Connect. It was a program that we purchased using the SBDI grant money that was awarded to us 4 years ago, and it was rolled out in 2022. That program offers pre-designed lessons for our teachers to deliver during mentor. It's important to note that these lessons represent Tier 1 social and emotional instruction and is delivered to all students. It is not counseling, it is not group therapy. In fact, because it is a prescribed research-backed curriculum that our teachers can confidently deliver during mentor, we can guarantee an experience for all kids. It's not politically aligned, nor does it look to influence student thinking. To the contrary, lessons are on things such as regulating your emotions, setting goals, avoiding peer pressure. This social emotional learning curriculum strives to develop independent and assertive critical thinkers, and that's the push behind it. I've invited Brianna Johnson here. She is our new school social worker, and this may be the first time some of you are meeting her to share her thoughts on our social emotional curriculum. I'll turn it over to her just for a minute.
Hi, everyone.
Good evening.
So I just wanted to speak about social emotional learning, why it's important in our school, also our current program, School Connect. So social emotional learning is essential for high school students. It equips them with the skills to navigate the challenges of adolescence and prepares them for success in both their personal lives and their future careers. High school is a pivotal time in students' lives for their emotional and social development. They face pressures such as academic stress, peer relationships, and planning for the future. By integrating SEL into the school environment, students can develop essential skills like self-awareness, empathy, and effective communication. Our current program is School Connect. It's a comprehensive program that fosters positive relationships and a supportive school climate. It helps students build social skills, navigate peer pressures, and create connections that promote a sense of belonging. By addressing the emotional and social aspects of learning, these programs not only improve academic outcomes, but they also reduce anxiety, depression, behavioral issues among students. The feedback we've received, by and large, from our school population is the inability for students and staff to connect with the School Connect lessons. They are targeting a less mature audience, asking students to watch cartoon-like videos, etc. Students are not invested in the content and therefore not able to internalize any of the great skills or strategies that are being taught with this program. Ruler changes this dynamic, you'll find out from Julie in a little while, in a groundbreaking way. By having staff engage with the training in a meaningful way, we're able to make recognizing, understanding, labeling, expressing, and regulating emotions, which is the ruler, a part of our school culture. Modeling the behaviors, beginning to develop common language in the building, and having staff competent in the content because they have connected with it is the gap that most SEL curriculums have that Yale has found a way to bridge.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brianna.
So our presenter this evening is going to share with you the Ruler program, including lesson topics and curriculum, as well as the safety parameters of the study. And participation in this study will also allow for support for our implementation of Ruler from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence throughout the implementation period. Other benefits of participating with Yale, first and foremost, the materials and programs are available to us at no cost. And will be able to be implemented with the support, like I said, of Yale. The driver for me is that it puts us into a community of practice with other high schools that are implementing Ruler, so that we will have a cohort of social workers, of principals, of teachers who are all implementing Ruler within their high schools so that we can celebrate best practices and address common concerns. So those are the drivers that led my interest in this study. And with that, I'd like to introduce to the board Ms. Julie McGarry. She is the Associate Director of Data-Driven Practice at the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. And we are honored to have you join us tonight.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I have some goodies. Can I just stash them here?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you.
Great. Okay. And is it these lovely young people who kind of ask for the slides as I'm reading them? Okay. So, hi everyone. I'm Julie. I'm gonna just I have some slides prepared that just sort of give a brief overview. I know that I've been able to connect with some of you in the previous subcommittee meeting, so hi, and nice to see you again for those of you. But I also understand that there's potentially some board members here who haven't yet kind of heard the overall spiel. So I just briefly have some slides that are prepared to kind of orient everybody to the curricular aspect as well as the research aspect. Already two really insightful and detailed questions have been raised, which is great, so I encourage you to please keep those coming. And so we'll devote much of the time to the questions that you all have. So if you could please go to the next slide, that would be wonderful. So as Brianna so eloquently introduced, Ruler is the name of the curriculum, as well as an acronym for the skills. And so the skills that comprise emotional intelligence that decades of research have shown us are the building blocks of being an emotionally intelligent and skilled person, are the ability to recognize, understand, label, express, and regulate emotions. My background is in teaching. I was a high school teacher before coming to this position, and I think that many of us can agree that labeling is a challenge for people of all ages. I've lived most of my life in Connecticut, and us New Englanders tend to say things like good, fine, maybe busy. But there's over 2,000 feeling words in the English language, and how much use do we make of all of those? Expressing emotions on its own is not a skill. Anyone can throw a tantrum, right? But expressing emotions the way that we wanted to, taking into account where we are and who we're with and what our goals are for the situation is actually tremendously skillful. As well as regulating emotions. We can all use unhelpful emotion regulation strategies, but to use helpful emotion regulation strategies that serve us and our goals and our long-term interests is very hard, and it's tricky. So if I could have you just click to it's going to bring up some additional content, would be great. So Ruler, as it stands, is a Castle Select, if you're familiar with the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. It's one of the leading kind of thought leaders in the field of emotion, SEL. We're an evidence-based approach to social emotional learning. It is school-wide and systemic, and I hear you all here sort of leaning into that tier 1 aspect of things. It's for everybody. It's not for only certain kids, or it's for everybody. These are skills that we can all get better at and all incorporate into our lives. And when we see this implemented, we see that community members in schools, and I'm saying community members because it is, it's the students as well as their educators. We can support them in understanding the value of emotions, building the skills, and when everyone is more skillful, it would follow that our school climate is also going to improve and become a more positive thing. So for the next slide, please. Here is how Ruler is kind of rolled out and implemented. And I'm talking about Ruler sort of the general offering at this moment, and I'm going to share a little bit more about what's special if you come in through the study in a moment, but this is sort of the general offering. Is that schools put together a Ruler implementation team made up of 5 staff members from the school, and we employ a train-the-trainer model. So they would come to a training with us. The timeline for all of this would be for the next academic year. So that training would happen either over the late summer or the early fall. Usually just come down to what it says in your contract about bringing people in over the summer, or not. And that group of people would attend a training where we train them with all the knowledge and content that they need to know to implement with the rest of their school community. I don't love the term train the trainer because it sounds like at the end of that training, goodbye, good luck with that. And that's not our model. There's tremendous amounts of support that we provide that implementation team on an ongoing basis. And as Kate alluded to, that community of practice with other high schools is a component as well. But effectively, that team of 5 is going to be leading the charge at the school. And as Brianna mentioned, what's interesting and different about Ruler is that we start with the grown-ups. So we're actually, our model advocates for an entire year before anyone says anything to the kids. So we're not asking people to turnkey this tomorrow or do something different in your class on Monday. We want the adults to have time to learn and engage and practice and ask questions and feel ready before we ask them to do that. It's in that second year that we begin implementation with the students, and we have lots of information and materials tonight to share with you about our student curriculum. And then on an ongoing basis, we enter into what we call this sort of sustainability and innovation phase. And this is where the schools that have been working with us for a long time sort of share with us that when you walk into our building, you can just feel it. You can feel that it's everyone cares about how you feel here. You can feel that that climate is warm and welcoming. You can feel that no one is going to be made to feel wrong for feeling the way that they feel in a certain situation, and that they'll be supported in getting through it. And so that's kind of our timeline. The next slide, please. So just to share with you, and one more click if you don't mind, or just go ahead and click all those down. Thank you. Just to share with you a little bit about the curriculum. I'm a really good person to have lots of detailed questions to because I'm one of the co-authors of the high school curriculum. So I'm not afraid for you to really get into it if you have questions. We really are basing this on kind of the developmental arc of 9 through 12 and what high school students are going through and what their experiences are. And really the job of high school is launching future adults. And so we are very sensitive to that sort of not feeling childish or babyish. We want this to be something that feels incredibly relevant to students' lives, that they can both use right now and be also storing away for later. I want to come back to that question about sort of why SEL, but for later is a really big component of that. The lessons are very flexible and user-friendly, and you can use them as they're written. I will say, as one of the co-authors, I am, a woman of an undisclosed age, and they sound like I wrote them. And so we invite educators as you're going through the lessons, if that doesn't sound like you, to change them, and they're very flexible and designed to be adaptable to the school community that they are in. And the curriculum spans all 4 years, so there are 20 lessons for each of the 4 years of high school for a total of 80. The way that those are implemented and rolled out and at what speed and how many in which year is something that we work with schools with on an individual basis. To the next slide, please. So I've described to you kind of Ruler as it stands now. It is a kind of curriculum and training package that is available for schools to purchase. And most schools, pre-K through 12, that kind of engage with us in Ruler, come through kind of the main door, where they can come to one of our trainings and they can become a part of the Ruler family, and we work with them and support them. Tonight we are talking about a separate side door that is for schools who would like to come to Ruler by participating in this research opportunity. And so this is not available to everyone. It is only for high schools. They have to meet certain eligibility criteria, which you all do. So there's a few things that are different. So one of the things that's the main difference about participating in a study is the exchange of information that happens in a research study. So we would collect data from the school, and in exchange, no one will send you an invoice for the $8,000 to $9,000 package that you would be receiving. That's kind of the main difference. The other difference is that because this is a federally funded study, we wrote into the study additional supports for the schools that are participating in the study, because we want them to really have every opportunity to implement at a high level. So there is more coaching, more support, the dedicated high school only PLC model that Kate mentioned. All of those things are things that are kind of a plus onto the regular package that are available to schools who come to the study. So those are kind of the main differences. So if you could just bring up the bullets here. Thank you so much, whoever's doing that. You're very skilled at it. So this is a study that is funded by the Institute of Education Sciences, which is under the umbrella of the Federal Department of Education. And it's a 5-year, I think $3-point-something million grant that we have applied for and received. And these are the outcomes that we're looking at. So for both students and educators, we expect that following the implementation of Ruler, that emotional intelligence skills will go up, that engagement and performance will go up. Obviously, these are measured differently for young people and for their educators. For students, we're looking at academic performance. For educators, we're looking at engagement, and on the flip side, we're looking at burnout in the workplace. We're also looking at belonging and well-being. And then at the school level, we expect to see gains in school climate. And so on to the next slide, if you don't mind bringing all that down. A little bit of details kind of about the rollout of the study. So the first thing to know is that the study is a randomized control trial. And if you're not familiar with that particular piece of research jargon, what that means is that we need to study schools who are doing Ruler alongside schools who are doing what we call business as usual, which is our control condition. So if you've ever read about like a pharmaceutical trial where half of the group gets the medication and the other half gets the placebo. Obviously in education research, we can't keep a secret from you if you are doing Ruler or not. But half of the schools will do Ruler right away, and the other half of the schools will do Ruler 2 years later. So it's not you enroll in the study and you have a 50-50 chance of getting Ruler. It's you enroll in the study and you will get Ruler either now or later. So I want to just make sure that everyone is aware of that distinction, that the way that the randomization happens. So we will follow all of the schools with our data collection initiatives for the, gosh, this is, makes me feel old, but the 2025 to 2026 and 2026 to 2027 school years. All the schools who enroll in the study will do data collection with us for those 2 years. Half of those schools will be doing Ruler at the same time, and the other half of the schools will be doing business as usual at that time. And then in the 2027 to 2028 school year, all the schools who were asked to wait will then unlock access to all of the same things that are available through the Ruler package. And then again, these are the outcomes that a little bit more detail that we talked about. So we could go to the next slide, which I think looked like was a duplicate. So, oh no, there's more here. Okay. So just an overview of the data collection activities. So we would administer student and staff surveys, and is it Tim? We're going to come to your question about the permission piece in a moment. But both students and staff would be surveyed at 3 time points over those 2 years. So in the fall of year 1, which you can imagine as sort of a baseline assessment, in the spring of year 1, which is sort of a midline assessment, and then again in the spring of year 2, kind of an end line. So there's 3 time points when we would be administering student and staff surveys. The staff surveys are about 30 minutes. The student surveys are about 39 minutes, so comfortably within a class period. And then we would also work with you all to collect what we call educational record data, which comprises attendance, discipline, and academic data. So you can imagine that we could ask the students on the survey, hey, what kind of grades do you get in English and math, and how many days were you absent last year, and how many office referrals and suspensions do you have? Or we can team up with somebody in the office who can send us all of that, anonymized by the student, and then we don't need to ask the teachers how many kids were missing from class last week. It shortens up the surveys nicely. So in the next slide, to share with you just a little bit about the implementation support, this kind of plus package that I've mentioned. So the initial training would happen, as I mentioned, either end of this coming summer or the very beginning of the next school year. And you would receive dedicated support from a ruler trainer and coach, and this is always a part where I feel awkward because that's my picture. Hi, I'm one of those people. I will be not there for a touch at the beginning of the school year because, as you might be able to tell, I have somewhere else I need to be. But I will be back for the rest of the 2 years to be with you all, alongside my colleague, Tangela Irby, who's pictured as well, and she is just one of our fantastic, all of our coaches are fantastic, but I have ample wonderful things to say about Tangela. We would meet with each school individually, again, as you're implementing ruler, so that's either now-ish or later-ish. We would meet with each school on a monthly basis, which is above and beyond what schools coming into the main entrance receive, as well as offer quarterly networking sessions with other schools. Schools who come in through the main entrance are training in a training class with elementary schools and preschools and middle schools and private schools and all kinds of schools in there. And so someone raises their hand and asks about circle time and recess and tantrums, and this training class would be just comprised of high schools that are in the study. And so it's all adolescent people all the time. And we get that request so often from our schools of, can we talk to other schools that are like us in a similar place of implementation, who work with a similar population? And so we wrote that into this grant to be able to say yes to people. The data collection is actually a really nice bonus, and I know someone was asking about, is there data to show a need at Portland High School? We would share back the data that we're collecting with you. So we will show you the aggregate data on school climate and all these outcomes that we're collecting so that you can see that in real time. And that will either be informing your ruler implementation if you're in the ruler group, or you will have 2 years of data to show what your school has been looking like before you begin ruler implementation. So that data piece is a really nice thing to have. All the schools who are in the study will be compensated $1,000 a year to thank them for their participation in the study and for working with us to collect that data. And then the schools assigned to the wait list, we will pay them an additional $1,000 to thank them for their patience. Although I can say from the cohort that's running right now, some of the schools in the control group are saying, we're good, we appreciate the pause. We're very busy and have a lot going on. So that's a little bit of the support package. So I think if you want to go to the next slide, I think that's it for me. So I'd love to open it up to the questions that you all have. So I'd love to just start with some of the questions that have been raised already. So sort of why SEL in general. In addition to everything that Kate and Brianna has shared, I'll just share a couple of more macro tidbits from the field. So one is that I mentioned we'll talk a little bit more about what comes after high school. There are a number of organizations, including the OECD, that put together, it's called workplace skills assessments, and they kind of catalog what global employers are looking for. And consistently, over the past 10 years or so, what you're seeing is more of the things that are floating to the top of that list are less technical skills and more what some people might call soft skills. I'm saying soft skills like this because I don't know about you, but regulating my emotions is hard. I don't get it right all the time. Sometimes people will call these non-cognitive skills. I also don't know about you, but my emotions live in my brain. But these are the skills that employers are saying that they want. They want empathy, they want regulation, they want cooperation, they want communication. These are the things that employers are saying that they want people to be able to have. We're also seeing, and Brianna was kind enough to point out to me, is it vision of the graduate? Your vision of the graduate lists many of these same things: communication, empathy. So these are the things that, right, when we launch our young people into the world, that we are finding that they want. And that's sort of a rosy picture of why SEL. There's also a less rosy picture of why SEL, which is that there's research to suggest that over the past 5 years or so, maybe 5 to 7 years or so, there has been and I want to say this really carefully because it's not great. There has been about a 20% increase in undergraduate students reporting that their day-to-day stress, anxiety, and overwhelm is prohibiting them from engaging in their educational experience. So every year, 20% more students than the prior year, and then 20% more on top of that are saying that they feel like they are unable to participate fully in their education due to their feelings. We believe, we are a tier 1 people, that the answer can't just be, well, we'll just train up 800,000 more psychiatrists. That can't be the only thing that we do. First of all, it's not practical. It takes many years to train up a psychiatrist. But also, what about now? Like, what about right now? What can we do now to be thinking about the upstream before people get to that place where they feel like they're really in crisis? And yes, are there going to be people who are experiencing crisis? Of course, but can we make that fewer? And that's the mission of Tier 1. And so when we hear stats like that about this sort of burgeoning mental health crisis among our adolescents and our young adults, we think that we can do better, and that's not just destiny. We don't have to just accept that that's how it's going to be. So I'd love to share with you more about the curriculum piece, but I think it's probably helpful to address just the parental permissions part as well. So what I can offer you is sort of our standard starting place that we recommend to most schools as they participate in the research process. And so Tim, you mentioned this opt-out form. It's a starting place, and it needs to be molded based on what the local policies are for each school that we're working with. So this is a national study that we're running, and so we have schools in Connecticut and California and New Jersey and all over, so everybody's different. And so I can't tell you what is or isn't in line with each school and district's policies. I rely on them to tell me what they need to be in compliance. So the starting point, kind of generic plan that we offer, and then schools will dial certain things up or down depending on the local need, is that we can provide you, we have, and I think I brought it tonight, a parental opt-out form. And so we would ask the school to make an effort, a very dedicated effort, to make sure that that gets in front of the eyeballs of every parent. So if you don't have an email address for every parent, then sending it out via email is not enough, right? We need to get that in front and to the ability of every parent. We provide it in as many languages as you need and whatever you need to make sure that every family can understand what's happening. Those are then returned to the school. I would actually ask that you not return those to me, because if Laurel's parents said they'd like her not to participate in research, handing me a form with her first and last and her parents' signature on it is not really in keeping with the spirit of that. They'd like me to have less information about her, not more. So you would manage those in the school office, and then when we collect the student surveys and the educational record data, we would ask the students, again, if your school has one, and it's something that students use, to put in an ID number, if it's the one on the back of their ID or the one that they type in at lunch or whatever is kind of the ID number that they use. And you're probably thinking, that doesn't sound very anonymous. You would never send us the answer key that says that this is student 1114, and this is student 1115, and this is student 1116. So then when you send us that attendance data, it's got the first column is the ID numbers running down the side. Take out the columns with the names and the date of birth, and I don't want any of that. And then we see the attendance data going across. So that way the data can be linked on the back end, so that we can do the analyses on it, right, but at the student level, but we never know who is who. If for some reason any of what I said doesn't work for your school, your district, your policies, then we can work with you to do something different. And so sometimes it's affirmative opt-in, and sometimes it's something else. And so we just offer that as a generic plan because that is agreeable to most of the schools and districts that we come across, and that tends to receive approval just fine. But if there's something different and special here, no problem. We've worked with all kinds of situations, and all kinds of schools and policies, and we can figure that out. So does that at least begin to answer your question? And the unfortunately unsatisfying part of my answer is that I can't tell you what, right? So the way that that policy was read, like how you all interpret that is up to you.
And Tim, we have reached out to Rebecca to get kind of a more full understanding of what our policy requires of us. And
It was a while ago, I thought we would have had a response.
she's been out, and
Yeah,
he just got his response.
Just got the response.
Oh,
It's coming in an email. But I can share it with you briefly if you want, that her response, or recommendation is, there are some federal laws that have requirements for consent, but about certain topics. So I need to understand what those topics are.
Sure.
So there's some things that we would have to have the affirmative opt-in, but there are some things that we don't, I just don't know exactly what those are yet.
Right, no, that's
Yeah.
understandable.
And that's something
I
that
just
we.
think that, and I would, my only comment back would be, doing this, I'm surprised to hear that we might be an outlier, that we would require. Our policies are unusual, or
Certainly not
outliers.
the only outlier.
Pardon me?
Not the only outlier.
No, we're not.
Okay, well, it means it's more common than uncommon, maybe.
I would say most places kind of
Maybe roll past it.
take the plan that the reason why we propose that
Right.
plan is because it does work in most places. But then for everybody for whom it doesn't work, it's usually, there's very little overlap in why. And so then the solution is customized to each
Right.
place.
Right.
So just to, in reference to that, what it might be helpful is for me to share, the student survey items. So you're gonna see that a couple of things that we look out for in educational research are, one, that there's nothing on here that is open-ended. The reason why that's important is that a student can't therefore disclose anything on these measures that would be concerning. So a student can't voice, a suicidal ideation via our survey, like it can't be done because it's all closed-ended, there's nothing where they can input any text of any kind. So sometimes that is a reason why we would need to seek a higher level of approval. You're also gonna see that there's nothing in here that is, could be considered a screener, for any type of, anything that's not tier one, right? So there's no screeners for mental health disorders or anything, there's nothing in there that would be a screener for anything diagnosed. The second thing that another thing that I didn't mention is that, setting aside whatever the parent process is that we go through, just because a student's parent has said yes or not said no, doesn't mean that the student can't, on their own behalf, say, I don't feel like answering this. That is their right as a human person. So just because their parents have said okay, doesn't mean that they have to participate in the survey, and you're gonna see on here that the first thing they're presented with is saying that this is optional, you don't have to do this, you can skip any item. So they can answer some of the items, none of the items, they can decline to participate altogether. So they have that ability sort of on their own behalf, but because they are minors, the first hurdle we need to clear is whatever is appropriate in your community for that parental process. Did I say that in a way that makes sense? The
Yeah.
students on themselves say.
Yes.
So thank you. The staff is much more straightforward because they're all grown-ups, so they can just participate or not. What other questions can I answer?
Just another question on, and Kate had mentioned this, and I want to understand better because you made a comment that kind of piqued my interest in, how is this not a clinical milieu?
Yeah, great
approach
question.
And you said in your own statement that, there's not enough psychiatrists to go around. So to me, this is kind of a substitute for what would otherwise be
Yeah.
performed by a licensed physician.
Let me clarify that,
psychiatrist,
because
yeah.
I think that's a great question. So, something that's sort of coming to the front of society's awareness is that, for many years, we all, it was sort of common in Western society to act like not everyone has a mental health. You only have a mental health if you have problems with your mental health, right? And then everybody else has sort of no mental health. In the same way that we all have a physical health and we own a body, all of us own a mind, and we have a mental health that comes along with that. And so, to me, the analogy is very similar to the way that we take care of our physical health. We all learn in school about nutrition and about moving our bodies, and about how to, right, why getting enough sleep is biologically important to cell regeneration. These are all things that are covered in our curriculum. If you break a bone, you need to go see somebody about that. What you learned in health class is not going to cover what to do because there's a bone sticking out of your body. That's a higher level of care than what we can say is covered by drink some water and consider taking a multivitamin. Maybe go for a walk. That's not enough. And so the analogy to what this is sort of the kind of eat some vegetables, get enough sleep, drink some water of our mental health. The kind of everyday things that we can all do to take care of our emotional lives and our emotional well-being. And if there's an issue, you should go see somebody about that. That this is not going to be enough to cover. And so when we think about, right, it's prevention rather than intervention. So if we can teach kids, right, about nutrition and about moving their bodies and about, right, that then hopefully there'll be fewer kids who are having really significant health problems down the line as adults in their 30s and their 50s and their 80s. And the same thing is true for their mental health. If we teach them strategies to manage and get through the everyday stressors that we all experience, right, and not all the stresses that come into our lives are serious and need intervention, and some we just have to manage them. And then if they're experiencing challenges that are greater than that, there are trained clinical people who can support with that. And this nothing that we're talking about with Ruler purports to be the equivalent of emergency room care, if that makes sense.
Right, I don't think that's a fair analogy, frankly. It's kind of an apples and oranges, breaking a bone and getting treatment versus exposing students being asked to expose an emotional status in an open classroom setting.
I guess the analogy would be from a broken bone to say, like major depressive disorder. There are people in the world who experience major depressive disorder, and it's problematic.
Does anybody deny that? I mean, I didn't hear that.
And it can be there's a number of ways that it can be treated by trained professionals in
Right,
a
but not
clinical
generally
setting.
in a high school classroom.
And that's not what we're talking about with Ruler. We're talking about the day-to-day, like, right, things that we all experience. So the analogy, right, that I like to give, and it's helpful to have like our social worker and some other type people in the room. They've already, in most schools that I work with, they've already got a line of students out the door. And so they need to not see the kid who put their head down on their desk because they got a bad grade. That could be triaged in the classroom. We could talk you through that with some strategies to support that. Is it disappointment, or is it that we can work on a tier 1 level to support that child who's going through that experience, and not be like, oof, you look upset, that seems scary, why don't you go see Brianna? So what we're really doing is trying to equip students with skills so that the likelihood of downstream problems occurring is never going to be 0, but it's lessened. Does that clarify kind of that example that I gave?
It doesn't satisfy me, but it clarifies.
Okay, that's fair.
I hear what you're saying, but
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Other questions? Sorry, I can't see everyone's nameplate, so I'm kind of I don't know.
Yep,
if
Dave,
someone else
why don't we go
should-
Dave and then Sarah? Sure.
Yeah,
I wasn't part of the curriculum and stuff, so I'm probably gonna ask the most
great.
questions
welcome
that
it.
you've already answered.
No, Dave, I'm part of it and I didn't get any of my answers.
Okay, so I got a lot of weird type questions here. First of all, how many on average opt out? I'm not gonna stick on Tim's thing, but I
Yeah.
just want to question. And this is a state requirement, federal requirement, right? So if we have opt out people, we still have to have a current
That's,
curriculum for those. We'd have to run two separate.
let me just clarify what that is. So the opt out would be to
I
participate.
didn't understand this question.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
sure. How many students opt out, how many students, families
What's
opt
an
out?
average? And then I said, because I think this is a federally mandated program that we have to have that we currently have. So we
Yeah,
have
we're talking
students
about two different things.
participating.
So
So
the-
this is additional?
So the opt out would refer to participating in the data collection activities.
Oh,
So if your school, your district chooses to adapt Ruler school-wide, then it would, I would imagine, follow the procedure for a parent who is opting their child out of any existing curriculum, which in my teaching career has only happened to me like a handful of times, like once every 5 years. The opt-out form refers to the data collection pieces, so the participation in the surveys and sending us that kind of back-end data on attendance and some other things that we look at. So that is the part that the parents feel like, I don't wish for the school to share my child's data with these people. and I don't wish for my child to be taking those surveys. Very small sample size right now, because we're just getting geared up with the study, and we're expecting most enrollment on your timeline for next academic year. But in the schools that we have enrolled right now, I would say on average, we're looking at 3 to 6 opt-outs for about every 1,500 students. So I don't know exactly how many students you have in Portland High School, but I don't think it's more than 1,500.
No.
So it's just a handful. It's really just often, that's in our experience. But that can vary, certainly, from community to community. So it's important just to be able to separate those two pieces. There's the curricular piece that's being adapted school-wide, and then there's the research component that is special to participating in the study, and that's the part that the parents can say, no, thank you. Does that clear that up?
Question is kind of multifaceted. When you do the surveys and things like that, it kind of almost sounds like you're vetting your coursework. Has this already been implemented and proven to be effective?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, and the answer to your question kind of hinges on that word proven. So, Ruler as a concept, as a curriculum offering, has been around for, don't hold me to this, but about 25 years. And it has gone through randomized control trials in the past. A randomized control trial, which is what we're doing here, is sort of considered the gold standard in evaluating if something works. There are other ways to collect data that are less rigorous. So Ruler began as a, it's interesting, Dr. Britton, that you mentioned this, as sort of a upper elementary, low middle school. That was kind of where it started. And then curriculum was developed for younger and younger students down to pre-K, and then up through middle school, and then high school is actually the newest kind of fully fledged offering that has existed. And so we have lots and lots of pilot data from less rigorous research designs that is all very positive, that is suggesting that this program with high school students is effective and does lead to the outcomes that we see here. We didn't just choose the outcomes for this study based on nothing. They're a very educated guess based on the pilot data that we have to this point. The proven to work, from a scientific standard, can really only be something that you claim after you have run a full-fledged randomized control trial, which we are doing right now. So almost, and hopefully soon, is the answer to your question.
Next question is, why Portland? Why were we?
They said yes to us.
So you didn't come to us, we went to you? Or?
We have offered, yeah, why don't you take that one, Kate?
So I alluded to it at the beginning. I participate in about 3 principals roundtables. Some are through Central Connecticut, the Central Connecticut region, obviously the Shoreline Principals Group, and I'm also on the CIAC Board of Control, and on the High School Advisory Committee to CAS. That affords me the opportunity to network with a lot of high school principals. I actually learned about this study from Siobhan O'Connor, who's the principal of Wethersfield High School. She had attended a training that Yale was putting on and learned about the study and put it out to our group saying, hey, if anyone is looking for a better alternative than what you already have for SEL, I got something you might want to check out. And so that was the path to learning about it, is that I responded yes to her invitation, and went and learned about it and was very intrigued that it might be a better option for our kids than School Connect. And then proceeded to start working it through the process of both the Tier 1 curriculum, making sure that's something that we wanted, and also I think the last person to bring a research study question to the board was me when we were looking for permission to look at AP Stats questions or something. So I knew that this was a board policy that we had to come through for the kids to participate in the research. So that's kind of the way it's been churning along since the summer.
So let me take it one step further then, and I don't know this. I was kind of asked in the backwards way, what's in it for Yale, but the kind of question I'm going to ask is, now if we're replacing our current curriculum with this, and we're getting it for free initially, is it a loss leader where you buy it and then you're going to pay for it down the road every year to keep this going?
Nope, I asked. Once you get it, and once you're trained, and once you have a cohort trained, it becomes your property, and you can continue to use it. You also can, for a nominal fee, which I don't remember, if you so choose to continue your affiliation for support, you can do that.
You're gonna have to, because teachers leave and things happen, you're gonna need retraining.
You probably would. If we train a core group of 5 people, the likelihood in 5 years from there we might have to train a few more trainers is probably there. But it would not be mass training extrinsically for teachers, because we would train them in-house in the program.
No course material or online or anything?
It's
like
all
that?
online, it's all accessible through the Ruler platform, it's all downloadable, PDF-able. I was actually, I thought, pretty savvy about the, about those questions, because so many things are, like what you said, here, try this subscription for free, and then pay for it for 6 years down the road. But no, this is something that once we participate and integrate it into our culture, if we want to continue it, we can continue it as long as we need to.
Yeah. And my last question for both of you, I went through material, I'm not an expert in this subject, but it seems like it's a lot. Is this on par with what we currently do? In other words, is it 45 minutes a week, and now we're gonna be doing 45 minutes a week, or is this more?
No, it's about the same as what we currently have. So we have one mentor period every 6 days. So roughly 36 mentor periods a year. Some of them we use for things like senior college planning. And some of them we use for things, if we have a guest speaker come in, Veterans Day program was done during a mentor period. We currently have with School Connect about 20 lessons per grade, which is about what this has, that are done in the mentor periods when they're not competing with something else. So the net zero, the change would be net zero.
I got my basic question, sorry.
That's good.
You guys are good.
Who teaches mentor
Sarah,
blocks?
can I have you use
Yeah.
the mic? I'm getting reports.
Yep.
It's hard to hear this side.
Hey, this is Sarah. Who teaches mentor blocks, and who would under Ruler?
Every teacher has a mentor group, with a very small exception. I have maybe 2 staff members that do not have an assigned mentor group for reasons that relate to their teaching schedule. But every certified staff member has a mentor group of roughly 10 to 13 kids. And the idea is that they stay with them for the 4 years. They're grade level specific.
Got it.
And then they cycle up with them so that they have that one person, that go-to person in the building.
Okay. And then in what you passed out, Julie, it asks questions, I believe, of the students of how the social studies teacher has used Ruler in the class and the art teacher. So what is the vision for how this is implemented in classes outside of Mentor?
Great question, thank you for that. So, it's that first year where no one is being asked to say anything to the students, where, this is where we would cover all of that with the staff. So, there's lots and lots of research to suggest that effective SEL implementation has 2 components. One is the explicit, right, this dedicated time to do the curriculum, to go through the content, to learn the skills. The second piece is that, you said every 6 days, so it's not exactly like this, but we can't only engage with the students of emotional skills on Thursdays from 11:12 to 11:48. We need to infuse that and embed that sort of everywhere. So those questions would only be asked, these are what's called our SEL infusion questions, where we ask students about their perceptions of how SEL is being infused into their content classes, would only be presented to the students in the spring of year 2, because before that they don't make any sense. And they're asking the students to share how much and the extent to which their content teachers are infusing the tools and principles and skills into their content. So just to give you an example that's close to my heart, because I used to be an English teacher, one of the schools that we work with, one of the English teachers there was teaching the to be or not to be, with the skull from Hamlet. And she had the students plot Hamlet's emotions, doing a tone analysis, which is a skill that we cover in English class, had students plot Hamlet's emotions through every couplet of that speech and realize that he's going all over the place, and that as a turn in the play is where Hamlet really starts to fall apart. she was going to teach that anyway. She was going to teach character analysis, she was going to teach tone, she was going to teach, but she's taking this thing that has now become a common language throughout the school and having that be another way that students can access that material. So we invite, right, we want all teachers in all of their content areas to be doing that kind of embedding, infusing, reinforcing. And another example I like to give is that all subject areas have assessment, and for many of us, assessment carries anxiety. So everybody can talk to students about strategies for managing their anxiety before the quiz we have on Friday. Like, what are you gonna do to take a deep breath and tell yourself that you can do a good job and that you know how to do hard things? So we wanna see that kind of, that reinforcement throughout the day, and that's what those survey questions there are capturing.
Okay, and then you also mentioned, Julie, that presumably our district met eligibility requirements. What are those?
Yeah.
Are they listed anywhere?
They are listed on our website. It's you need to be a public, comprehensive high school that can administer surveys in English, that serves grades 9 through 12, and I said comprehensive. So like a regular high school.
Okay.
Is the eligibility. So it's not open to private schools. It's not open to you know, like dual language, because unfortunately, many of these measures are not valid if you translate them into other languages, because emotion words don't go to right? So if you had a school that needed it translated in 6 languages, it's unfortunate. We'd love to have that school in our study, but it does too many things to the data. So we need the students to be able to take the surveys in English.
Okay, and then kind of following on from there,
and in the U.S.
Got it. I think that Ruler may have been criticized in the past for like cultural sensitivity or being culturally informed. How have you addressed any of those critiques in what you're developing for high school?
Sure. Can I ask you a follow-up question?
Sure.
When people raise that, everybody means something different when they kind of use that terminology. Can you say more about what you mean by that so I can respond to that?
Yeah.
And not what I'm guessing you mean?
And I think even your note about like different emotions don't translate to different languages. Well, we have students who are multilingual learners. So like, how is this curriculum devised so that it's going to be understood by the broadest swath of students possible, and that whereas maybe there is shame that's a part of some culture that may not be in another student's ethnic background, like how is what you've created addressing those concerns?
Great question. Thank you. That really helps me to give you an answer. So again, it's just helpful just to disaggregate Ruler as a school-wide approach to teaching students skills about their emotional intelligence and the serving component. The serving component is the serving component, what it is part of the research process. So those items would lose their scientific validity if we were to translate them into many other languages. The Ruler curriculum is not, I don't have that same concern. I actually think it's wonderful for schools with linguistic diversity to use Ruler as a way to engage with what's going on with other kids. So just to give you an example, I am a very elementary Spanish speaker, but I have been made to understand that there is a word in Spanish that is desamor, and it is the feeling that feels like the wet cardboard in the bottom of a box when you realize that all of the love has fallen out of a relationship. No word in English for that. We don't have a word to describe that concept. There's a Scandinavian language that has a word that describes the feeling of eagerness and anticipation when someone is coming to your home and you keep going to the window to check to see if they're here yet. We don't have a word for that. So Ruler is a great avenue actually to engage, right? Like many experiences and many things. The key to really sort of being an emotionally intelligent person towards yourself as well as to others, and Ruler is really about intra and interpersonal skills, is that we really work with, again, first our adults and then our students on a concept that we called being an emotion scientist and not an emotion judge. And there's a lot, like, I mean, right, if we had many hours, I could spend answering your question, but I think this is the best way to capture it, is that there's no such thing as a good or bad or right or wrong emotion. Our emotions are what they are. And so there's not anything wrong with us if we feel anger in a certain situation. What makes you feel angry might be very different than what makes me feel angry, but the feeling of anger is a sense that something is unfair, that there's injustice at play, and I can name and recognize that injustice, and I don't like it. That's a highly individualized experience, what sets that off. But we can relate to each other as all having had that experience, and then we can appreciate each other for having different experiences of what has caused us anger. So it's both shared and highly individualized, if that makes sense, right? That emotions are a universal human experience, but also something that's highly individual, and we want students, again, to approach that from be the emotion scientist and not the emotion judge, right? The emotion judge would say, you're wrong for feeling anger, or every time you feel anger, you should do this to make it go away. And the emotion scientist would say, there's some anger that I'm noticing. Where is that coming from? What might be a helpful way to deal with that? As opposed to kind of coming in and having all the answers or making a judgment about goodness or badness or rightness or wrongness. So I hope that succinctly begins to answer your question. There's a lot that we could talk about, but I think that's kind of the biggest conceptual way that I can share. That's how we think about that.
Yeah, and it definitely gets at it. I mean, just in looking at, I think it's the questions about emotions at the beginning of the survey, it does seem like there may be some value judgments in that, and so that was kind of also where some of
Yeah,
that
so
question was
these
coming from.
surveys are, again, not part of the curriculum. That's not like reflective of it's how we look at certain outcomes. So one of the measures that's in there is called the PANIS. It's actually, we disagree with the title. It's called the Positive and Negative Affect Schedule. With Ruler, we are super deliberate that we don't use words like positive and negative to describe emotions. We use pleasant and unpleasant. Because our unpleasant emotions are not negative. They're not super enjoyable, but they're not negative. They have a purpose. If you feel fear and that causes you to jump back out of the street before the car hits you, that's tremendously beneficial. That's great. So it's not about goodness or badness, but unfortunately this measure, which has been in use in the scientific community for many years and has been validated and proven and shown to predict all the things that we think it predicts, is called the Positive and Negative Affect Schedule. We didn't pick that name. So the measures are separate, and they've been chosen because they are either valid measures of the direct outcomes that we're looking at or shown to be predictors of the things that we are looking at. So when a student, for example, takes the PANIS, which is a list of, I think, about 26 words, and they rate over the past 2 weeks how often they felt that, we don't think that in any group of any humans that it's going to be 0% for some of the negative emotions. That's not realistic. But after doing 2 years of Ruler, might that trend in a different direction? Might students feel less stressed or less overwhelmed or less anxious? Perhaps. And that's the kind of thing that we'd be looking at. So it's not, the goal isn't 0. It's, right, like moving things in a direction that's going to support them in their learning. We know that if you feel stressed and overwhelmed all the time, it's harder to learn.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. These are great questions. This group is asking like the 200 level questions, which I appreciate. What other questions can I answer for people?
I really have a lot of questions, and I think it would probably be fair to let somebody else go before I do.
Do you want to pick your top question?
I'm reading here. How's this one? Story number 4. I would like to know why we would be asking this on a survey.
Sure.
Jill is really worried. Jill is really worried about whether she is, in quotes, normal. Jill wonders if other kids think about what she thinks about, like being different or feeling confused at times about who she is. What is the purpose? For me, a child who has to take a survey like this, just being part of a survey like this, kind of plants a little seed in someone's mind. And taking a survey, I think a child thinks of it as a test, and they want to come up with the correct answer. And then you give pointed answers that may not address any of the person who's taking the survey's response, and the person taking the test is being pigeonholed into giving an answer for one of these questions, and then that data is being tracked along with their attendance and their curriculum and their academic achievements and their discipline, and it just does not feel right to me. There are many questions in these surveys that I didn't feel were appropriate for high school students to even have to think about. There was one in here about a child being worried about their father making enough money. why should a child even have to read something like that? I mean, when my kids were younger, I purposely didn't let them even know my monetary situation. Now that kid's going to go home that night after taking this survey and think to themselves, does my dad make enough money? Is that something now I have to worry about? This whole survey feels bad to me. I don't think we should participate in it. And I mean, another thing is, I don't know whether or not, you said it's federally funded. There is a lot of looking at the federal funding right now by our new president-elect. I don't know whether that funding will be pulled, so I'm not sure where this will land. I personally think that emotions should only be shared with someone that you trust. I don't feel that emotions should be shared with other students in a classroom setting with a teacher that they barely know. I think a parent or a pastor or someone who's very close to them, they may even have their own counselor. I don't think it's fair to put that pressure on a child to be questioned in front of other friends or not friends or other groups of friends that they may not even be acquainted with. You had mentioned that Ruler has been in existence for almost 25 years, but yet you said 5 to 7 years, we've had a 20% increase in the stress level of students. So to me, the stress levels are increasing, but your programs have been distributed. What does that say for this program? I heard Kate say that there were 20 lessons with the current social emotional learning, but yet I also heard that there were 80 lessons with this. So we're increasing fourfold. That's what I heard.
20 per year.
It's over 4 years.
20 per year, okay. So, I just, it's not something that I think we should be doing.
Should I take those one at a time?
If there are specific things you want to respond to,
Yeah,
sure.
I'm happy to respond to that. So I tried to just jot down to make sure that I got everything that you were asking. So just in response to the question about the survey items, this specific scale that you're referencing here that has the questions about the scenarios is from a measure that's called the Mesquite, but it's an acronym. It's called the Meyer-Salve-Caruso, which are the name of the researchers who developed it, and the EIT, Emotional Intelligence Test. And there's a version for adults and a version, this is called the Mesquite-YV, the youth version. So the scenarios that are in here have been specifically developed to be things that are relevant and salient for the adolescent population, about the sort of 12 to 18 population. So the adult version asks them things about, navigating conflict with a coworker, and obviously that's not as salient to the population. So the purpose of these items is to really have the students be thinking through how the character in the story is likely to be feeling, and then to present them with a number of options for what the character might do in response to that feeling, and give their judgment of how helpful they think that response is. So it's not actually putting the student in that position or asking them to take on that feeling. It's saying, if someone was going through this, which of these strategies, how helpful do you think each of them are? I
don't think there's enough information. They're not being offered the opportunity to ask questions about a 2 or 3 sentence scenario, and I don't agree with that, but that's yeah.
And so the intro text for this item says, right, sometimes there's more than one good answer. Choose the one that feels best. Some questions may be difficult. If you don't understand a question, don't worry, just do your best. Make your best guess and you're not sure how to answer. So it's not presented to the students as we're expecting them to have a perfect answer for every item. We're just asking to kind of get a sense of how helpful or beneficial they think some of these actions might be. And the scenarios are developed or have been developed, tested, revised, redeveloped, retested with adolescent populations to make sure that they predict all the things that we think that they predict.
But
and so
not
that-
all, but
that
not all
testing has
kids
been
go
done.
through these things, is my point.
Not all humans goes through
children.
anything.
Right.
Right.
That's not possible. We can't possibly develop a measure that only has things on it that every child has personally experienced and nothing on there that they've never. It's not. So that's why we give them many things, and it's scored. The way that the data are analyzed is holistically. So no one of these single scenarios is singled out as, you know, the most important one that tells us how good the kid is at regulating their feelings. They're all taken together and they're all weighted, and the way that it's a to be honest, a very complicated scoring mechanism that even I don't fully understand, but thankfully we have really qualified professionals who know how to analyze that data. And so it's not, you know, sort of a didactical yes, no, right, wrong. The way that these are worded is that they're designed to have a little bit of that ambiguity in them, because we find that we get better, kind of more accurate answers out of the students.
Can I just say, in response to Angela, some of the things you're saying, I think it's important to remember, like, I teach in an elementary school, so I have to change my lens and think about, these are sophisticated teenagers who are living in a digital age where they have access to so much information, and I think it's very naive of us to think that they've never thought about how much a dad makes. You know, that's in their face all the time on TikTok and all these other platforms that they are on. So I don't think that the questions necessarily are going to bring up new ideas for these kids. I think it's just broadening their perspective about, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That's never occurred to me that might be an issue in another family. You know, I don't think it's eliciting or putting ideas in kids' heads. I think it's, you know, a survey, asking good questions.
And again, the surveys are not part of the curriculum, and as any student, right, depending on what you all decide, any student's parents will have the first say of, right, whether they're participating, and then a student can then decline to participate on their own behalf, as well as choose to participate but skip any item. That's always something that's available to them. Just to tick through the rest of your questions really briefly, none of us can say what can happen with federal funding at any time, and that's true regardless of any administration. And so this is money that has already been allocated to this study, and so we have every reason to expect that it would continue. Any extenuating circumstance could change that, but we are not personally worried that our funding is in jeopardy. As for asking students about their emotions in a public setting, that's not the nature of the curriculum. It's really designed to have them be reflecting and developing their own skills and practicing. There's nothing in the curriculum that says, like, you should now tell everyone your inner emotional life and every detail of it. That's not part of we just want students to be doing that reflecting and doing that learning and doing that kind of experiential gaining of those skills. And then your question about, the SEL existence in the field versus what we are seeing in the mental health trends is a really good one, and it's being debated by scientists with much more training than I am. And we don't really have an answer as to what that is. All I can say is that the SEL curriculums that have been in schools are not the only factor that are influencing our young people's mental health. And also we can't go back in time and see if it would have been worse if we hadn't been doing anything this whole time. There's unfortunately just no way to know. But we want to do everything that we can. We believe that we have a good product, and we think that we can help some kids gain some skills, and we're going to keep on trying, because as of right now, nobody has really solved that. It might be helpful to just share a bit more about the curriculum.
That's what I was going to ask, if we have a sample of the
Yeah.
curriculum rather
So
than because I think we get hung up in the survey.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
if we came to you today, and I want to change it a little bit, and if we came to you today and said, we want to do ruler in school, we're not going to do the research. We want to implement ruler instead of the program that we're now currently using. What would that look like? The curriculum would be 20 lessons per grade. It would be mentored by a certified teacher during the mentoring program.
Following
that
a
would
year
follow
of adult training.
Right.
Yep.
There would be no surveys. There would be
no surveys.
There would be some, but what would the assessment look like? In other words, what would we be looking at in terms of whether or not this product is better than the previous product?
Great questions coming out of this group.
Do I understand correctly that I should hold my answer until I'm in front of the microphone? So
Yes,
that I can
please.
hear it?
Thank you.
So let me.
Maybe I could ask a Kate question.
Yeah, I wanted to be respectful of the board's time, and I wanted to make sure we're using your time productively and answering the questions that you need us to answer.
We can share.
I think it will be helpful.
Or we can.
Um,
Oh, there you go. You guys. she has
Sorry,
time.
Kate.
Okay. I work with teenagers. I think it will be helpful to see the topics of the lessons, and I am hopeful that that can dispel some of the concerns that it's bearing your emotional soul in a classroom. If you look at some of the topics of those questions, they are topics that are open-ended. They can mean different things to different kids. They're talking about your goals. They're talking about standing up for who you are. What do you want your personal blueprint to look like? These are all things that students can participate in to the greatest extent possible, or not at all. I mean, one of the things that we're really super sensitive with here in Portland is we try not to put kids on the spot ever. Not in math class, not in social studies class, and certainly not in a mentor session. I mean, we are far more student driven and student centered than that, and that's something that's super important to all of us here. I do want to come back to Tim, because Tim and I have been on. Tim has been on the board as long as I've been the principal here, and I used to, my first year principal, I was pretty scared of you, but I never
Now
like.
it's the other way around.
I never like it when Tim says I'm unsatisfied with an answer. That's not how I want to leave. And I think the point that Julie was getting to when she was explaining the broken bone analogy is that I wanted to make sure that the board had an understanding that the topics covered in the ruler curriculum in the classroom are as benign as the health curriculum, eating good nutrition, and those kind of things. They are not things. The last thing I want is teachers wading into something that is beyond the scope of their training. And that's why the tier 1. Think of it as everybody gets algebra 1. And then the kids that need extra help get extra help, and the kids that need special ed get special ed. It's the same kind of tiered thing. This is the type of tier 1 curriculum that, if trained, and they're talking about training for a year, which is exceptional, that any certified staff member will be able to confidently deliver, and that's important to me. So I don't know if that satisfies your answer, but I'm rooting for partial.
It gets me almost home.
Almost home. Yeah, I'll take it.
I had a question about cost, because there's a stipend, there's a $1,000. I assume that's just literally $1,000 if we engage in this. But we're going to be training, it sounds like 5 core people at least. And
they pay for that.
They pay for that. So
Yep.
whatever stipends involved or whatever.
It doesn't
payment-
cost us anything.
So, okay.
And that's a benefit to doing this study.
Like if
Yeah.
you,
Well,
sorry,
that is the benefit.
if you need to like stipend people to engage in a training,
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah. Right.
we're not gonna normally sending 5 people to that training would cost $8,000 for the school.
Yeah.
We are comping that to you, but if.
Right, but we still have
something in the contract
employees.
that says,
Right.
yeah,
So would you contemplate that those folks would do that on their,
So I think the
Regular
cost would
school
be
time,
the cost
or-
of a sub. That could be
Okay,
a hidden
alright.
cost. I can tell you right now that 3 of the 5 will be myself and 2 counselors who don't require subs.
oh, okay. Yeah.
So minimal, I will say, as far as that would be.
And my understanding is that's what that $1,000 is meant to kind of offset. That if you were to need a sub to send someone to a training, that's covered by that $1,000.
It absolutely could be, and I would also, I would actually propose that stipend be used to go to our database coordinator for the extra work that she would be doing in working with,
Okay.
with Yale to sanitize the data and submit it. Because I know they have very specific requirements, and I would want to make sure that we follow all of those as well. And she's certainly somebody who's got a lot on her plate.
Yeah.
And I also recall in a previous presentation that the Institute of Educational whatever is the body that will analyze the data and provide the reporting back. So Yale provides the support, provides the curriculum, and the report would come from a separate institute,
Yep,
would be
that's
reviewing the data. So there's another level of anonymity
Yes.
in that process as well.
Yep, that's correct. It's bad look and bad science for someone who's admitting that she's a co-author of the curriculum to be the one
Right,
who runs the analysis.
right, to be
That's-
doing the
that's
analysis, exactly.
Very biased, I think it's great.
Exactly.
So we have an external evaluator, who are professional researchers who do not work at Yale and have no affiliation with Ruler, who will be doing all the analyses.
I have 2 follow-up questions.
Yes.
Just make sure I have the mic. One, it seems, I don't think we have received, unless it's in the curriculum committee's folder, like a form with the links to the units. Is that accurate? We just have a print version?
Yes, and the
Okay.
links to the actual content live behind the paywall.
Okay,
Right.
But I have also provided you with sample lessons
okay, yeah.
that look like this.
Yeah,
And there are some
And so this is something that we are able to share.
okay.
That I asked just you not pay attention to the numbering of the lessons because they look very random. It's one lesson, the lessons are numbered 1 through 80. And so it's one lesson chosen from each of the 4 years. So you're gonna get to see the scope across
okay.
all 4 years. And we've chosen the lessons that we chose in combination with each other because it shows how we kind of take one concept and come back around to it in a more nuanced way, and then come back around to it in a more advanced way, so that you can see how the concepts are maturing with the kids as they go through that process. So the numbers, sometimes people say, feel a little random. Why does it go from 3 to 42 to 66? But it's because of the way we have the whole curriculum numbered.
Okay, got it. And this next question may be more for Kate. Given that teachers are going to be trained by you and others that are trained, how, like, is that just part of PD time that's happening already? Or is this an additional thing that's being added to teachers' plates?
My proposal would be to embed it into existing PD time. I was actually very intrigued by the idea of either starting next year or in 2 years, because that offsets us with NEASC. So I didn't design it, I can't take credit for that, but it works. So it would be embedded in faculty meetings, which teachers already receive PD that I usually lead, or Eric is leading for a delayed opening next week. This would be one of our school initiatives for the year. It would not be additional on teachers.
Okay, thanks.
Would this be presented to all teachers or a subset of teachers based on the classes they taught?
So the core 5 would get trained as
Right.
the
No, I understand the
trainers,
core
and then
5.
all certified staff.
So all certified
Because
staff.
they all have mentor groups.
common language.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can say this, I've seen Ruler in the elementary school, and I know it works, because kids will do the mood meter, the little boxes. I also participated in Mark Brackett's book group, and was surprised at how, I thought I was a pretty emotional person and knew all the words that would express my emotions. And going through that process, I learned that I know some words, but I didn't know a lot of them. And so it was telling for me to actually, and I would suggest join the book group. He continues to run them, I believe. But you know, it's a process, because in the world that we live in, we're saying to our kids, don't cry, it's okay, you're gonna be all right. Well, they're crying, they're not gonna be okay. And parents that are shoving that emotion down in little kids raise teenagers who are shoving emotions down because they've been told that they're bad, or that they're not valid, or just get over it. You know, you lost your boyfriend and you're, you know, lost ends, and you know, the kids need to be in touch with their emotions. And I think high school is too late, quite frankly. I think, you know, what we're doing at the elementary school is the groundwork for healthier individuals in the high school setting. But I'm willing to try whatever it takes to get healthy individuals, because this is the next generation of workers and moms and dads and people that are going to run the world. And if we're not in touch with our emotions, I don't know where we're going to be. So
And military and firefighters and.
Exactly.
Law enforcement.
Exactly. They're gonna all be running, places. And we need emotionally healthy, mentally healthy people, and I agree. When you think of mental health as being somebody who needs a psychiatrist or a psychologist or go lay down on the couch and talk to somebody, but at the end of the day, we're all suffering from, the busy world that we live in, overload of information, and sometimes, we just need to do it, so.
Yeah.
I see the benefit of it, and I would be all in support of doing the research part of it, because it's free and it's supportive, and I think it would be beneficial to our high school. So that's my take on it, but.
So I'm not going to ask us to take action on this tonight. As Charles explained, I really was thinking about this as sort of a first read, like we do with our policies. I think it's fair to give ourselves time to mull it over, to see if we have additional questions, and to do a second read and take action at our next meeting. But if there are any other immediate questions right now while we have Julie with us, or for Kate, we can take any final questions before we move on to our other business. But I do know that, both of them are available to us by email also if we have additional things that we need answers to between now and January.
Thank you.
No additional questions?
A couple of comments. I want to
Sure.
thank Julie that your presentation was really well laid out, explains the ins and outs of it. I was trained on Ruler, and we implement it at my school, and I definitely see a benefit to it, and I'm excited to think about how it can be incorporated. I read through the sample lessons and the scope and sequence, and I think it's great how it's a lot of content that is already taught.
Thank you.
And it's just going above and beyond, and really, I think it's very beneficial. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Other questions that I can answer for people? I'm just sharing 2 more goodies that I brought for everyone.
Thank you.
I'll just quickly go over what these are, and then if there's any other questions. So just the last things that I handed you here are a copy of the staff survey measures. Obviously, way less complicated because they're all grown-ups and they can, their parents are not in charge of them anymore. I will just quickly note, I don't think I shared this, that the staff are all compensated via a $50 gift card every time they participate in a survey. So that's nice. Just our way of saying thank you every time they complete one of our surveys. The final document that I shared with you is just this overview document, and it's really just kind of a repeat of everything that I shared with you tonight. So how the curriculum is rolled out, how it's engaged with, all the measures, the timeline, all of that. So this is kind of your go-to if you're like, wait, what did she say about when that happens versus this? It's all laid out in this overview document here. So I hope that that is a helpful resource for everybody. Any other questions that I can answer
I
for
do
you all
have one
tonight?
other question, because we talk
Yeah.
about Tier 1 all the time, but what about the Tier 1 and Tier 2 and Tier 3 students in terms of what they would be able to or
Yeah,
not able to
fantastic.
participate with?
So the first and most important thing that I always say whenever I get this question is that all of those people still need to stay in their jobs. Doing Ruler does not eliminate any of those positions. We still need all of our Tier 2 and Tier 3 staff and support and all those things. You had mentioned, Meg, I know you're familiar with the mood meter, but one of our tools is kind of a visual tool to check in with your emotions. And it would be great if when a student walked into the counselor's office, really going through something, if they could start with something that's familiar instead of being handed, a scale, right, to check off how they're feeling. So if they could start with a conversation that was around something that they've already engaged in their classes, that might be an easy, right? It can be applied into those settings. I completely just lost my other train of thought there. Oh, the other thing that I would say is that many of us who've worked in education know that there are kids that are going through some really serious things, and I think that Ruler addresses that in a two-pronged approach. So one is that when we as educators have students disclose something that's really worrying to us, that first year of adult of adult practice and skill building is just as much about being prepared to teach this to the students as it is about taking care of your own well-being. And so when a student discloses something to me that's really hard to hear, how can I draw on the skills that I've had the opportunity to learn to help me to be able to still sleep tonight, or to be able to come back tomorrow and be refreshed and say, that was really hard to hear, but I'm back in it, and I'm going to do everything that I can to take care of that kid. The second thing is that as students are gaining more language and awareness, and as staff are gaining more language and awareness, there is the potential that there were kids who were sort of cruising along, kind of quietly struggling, and we didn't notice them. And so there's always a possibility that engaging this might prompt a student to actually go get the help that they're sort of realizing, oh, I really am struggling beyond what I can manage on my own, and I am going to swing by somebody's office and go ask for help. So it's right, the tiers always work in concert with each other, and that always needs to be part of it. And so I think that everything that we do to build skills at tier 1, right, should be reducing what we're seeing at tier 2 and 3, but also makes tier 2 and 3 more effective, because everyone's coming from a more skillful place.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question.
Any other lingering questions?
Okay.
Nope.
So,
Thank you,
thank
Julie.
you.
Thank you.
Board members, thank you for taking the time to listen to this. Your questions were really thoughtful, and I'm very appreciative of your care, concern, and investment in what we're doing at Portland High School. And thank you, Julie. I have already learned so much just from my 3 or 4 meetings with Julie. So it has been an enriching experience no matter how we choose to proceed. I think we'll be back at the January, I will be back at the January meeting, and hopefully Eric will be able to join me as well if there are any additional curriculum components as teased out from the study. But no matter what, we want to continue providing high-quality SEL instruction for our kids, because we all know, and frankly, when you look at those lists of lessons, none of us are done working on those goals. These are life skills, and these are works in progress. And so anything that we can do as school to support that with our kids and our families and our teachers, I would like to try to advocate for. So thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. We appreciate you coming.
I really appreciate it.
Yep.
And,
You have more
any
paper
questions that you
for us?
have in follow-up, we're available. And please, I'm sure Kate can help us send those along. Any questions? Absolutely, yeah, after you've had a chance to review everything in more detail. So thank you all.
All right. Thank you so much. We are going to move on next to our student representative report. And Liam, we're happy you're here with us tonight. What have you got for us?
Okay, so the Portland Cromwell football team is wrapping up their season. The entire fall sports season as they compete in states later this week. With the upcoming conclusion of football, the winter sports season has officially begun this week. There are a variety of new coaches, so we are looking forward to see how they help guide us through this upcoming season. November 17th, the National Hiking Day coincided with the Portland High School Hiking Club's trip to Gillette Castle. Although the castle was closed for the season, hiking club members explored the trails that circle the property. This Thursday, December 5th, Portland High School musical students are traveling to New York City since the high school has collaborated with the middle school in order to produce the show. Our directors, teachers, and producers decided to dedicate this experience to just high school students as a way to thank us for accepting the new change. Alongside shopping and eating at the Hard Rock Hotel, students will watch the Great Gatsby musical on Broadway. Later this Saturday, the high school band and chorus, specifically Triumph, I believe, will be performing at the tree lighting and the Christmas parade thing. Then last week, 2 weeks ago, Triumph had their induction for mostly juniors and I believe a few seniors. Give me a second. 2 weeks ago, Student Senate held their annual food drive. As always, it was a major success. And the band had their fall concert, which was also very successful at showcasing the great potential of our music department for the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. There's a lot going on. It's a busy time of year, huh?
Yeah.
Are you involved with the musical?
Yeah.
So you're excited for your New York trip?
Yeah.
Excellent.
That's this Thursday, right?
Yeah.
Pray for no snow.
Hoping.
Hoping, yes.
Oh, yeah.
We're aware.
It could be a little iffy, huh?
Yeah, we are aware.
All right. Well, fingers crossed that the snow doesn't really materialize and that you all get to enjoy that trip. Any questions for Liam? No? Okay. We'll move on to communications and updates. Dr. Britton?
All right. So I included the latest enrollment report dated December 1. Very consistent. Pretty much no change. It's amazing how steady we are. Any questions on that? Nope.
Nope.
Okay. Also did include a letter of resignation. Very sorry to see Sarah Paola, who is our social worker. She works here in our Harbor program. Wish her all the best. She did a great job for us. Big loss. We're going to miss her. As a reminder, I am doing exit interviews with all the people who are leaving. Personnel committee is meeting tomorrow. I'll be reporting out on some of the reasons that folks are leaving. Sarah is we're very sorry to see her go, but she's leaving for the reasons that are best for her career and her family, and look forward to sharing those with the personnel committee tomorrow. Okay. Sarah, I wish you all the best. Okay, a couple of things. A lot has happened since we last met. I feel like many things go on between board meetings. I just want to give you a couple of updates and reflections on. First, on a personal, I was in Bridgeport today. I was on a collaborative conference, NESC. Thank you for letting me do those kinds of things. What a great school. I will just say, I know we're not supposed to talk about specifics, but I will just say what a wonderful community that they have there. And it's very rewarding. It's a very rewarding thing. I love the NESC. I think their standards are fabulous. I think the process is fabulous. I think the feedback that we give and that we get, and this is great. It's a great way to give back to the profession and help a school improve. So thank you for letting me do that, and thank you for the leadership team for holding down the fort while I was gone. I get a lot out of it, and I hope the schools get a lot out of the feedback that we provide. We also, since our last board meeting, congratulations to you all. You were the recipient of yet another award that we received at the CABE convention, 2 weeks ago now?
2 weeks
right?
ago.
Liam, I know you were there. I hope you had a great experience?
It was certainly interesting.
It certainly is. Right? That's a lot. I got a lot out of it. I think the keynote speaker was outstanding. The breakout sessions were great. The student presentations were awesome. And we do now have the 2024 up on our plaque in the central office. So congratulations, Portland Board of Education, for being recognized with yet another leadership award. And I think you'll probably reflect on that in your remarks at the end of the meeting tonight, too.
Well, there's lots of stuff.
It depends on
going
how much more
Yeah,
we have to
that's
go
right.
through.
All I can say.
All right, so two good things now, one not so good thing, but I have to take a minute to reflect with you on the lockdown that we had a couple weeks ago. There is a reason why we practice, right? And I in general, when you're dealing with these things in real time, they're always very complicated, but it's nice to kind of, we practice like we play. And we were not practicing. This was a real lockdown. This was a situation that we had to respond assertively to. And I think we did a really, really fine job. I give us A's. I don't give us A pluses. I don't think you'll ever get an A plus. But, all of our systems worked the way they are designed to work. I do want to take a minute to really, recognize some people that I just think performed fabulously well, helped us manage a very complicated situation, digest the information in real time, and respond in a timely way, the way we needed to respond. All of the first responders, and that includes the folks who came from Portland, Middletown, Meriden, and Middlesex in general, as well as the state police, it was a little much to see what happens when that many police officers respond. They got here in a timely way, incredibly professional, and they did what they had to do to make sure that the threat that was posed to us was managed well. So thank you to all of the folks who came to help us manage that. I think that they did a fabulous job. Our administrative team, terrific. Kate, Chuck, Frank, and Bob, they were on it. They responded effectively, made the right decisions, activated our systems, and then mitigated and helped with the response in a very effective way. And of course, all of our administrators came up and helped with it. Even Mike and Ryan, they came up, they responded, they helped us manage the situation. It sped things up, and I can't thank our leadership team enough for everything that they did to handle what was a very complicated set of circumstances. Of course, the entire faculty and staff at the high school and middle school, they were pros. They knew what to do. They responded in a way to keep the students safe, keep everybody calm, make sure that the communication was flowing as it was emerging. So thank you to the entire high school, middle school faculty and staff for all that they did. The clerical staff, administrative assistants, were absolutely terrific throughout the event. And I especially want to call out Jamie DeRose and Meg Bailey for helping us take attendance, for making sure that everybody was accounted for. They worked very hard, but very conscientiously, and had great ideas about how to make sure that we were getting information from teachers and identifying where students might be in the building if they weren't exactly where they needed to be. That helped us take attendance and make sure that all of our students were accounted for as quickly as possible. Thank you to Sarah for helping orchestrate our response. We had clinicians from the state, Community Health Center, who we have a partnership with, and East Hampton help respond. When East Hampton had their challenge, we sent our clinicians to East Hampton. They reciprocated and sent their clinicians here to help us with the fallout the next day. So thank you to Sarah for helping manage that, for all of the clinicians who respond, and then of course our in-house counselors and clinicians for helping put the pieces back together the next day. I've got to point out that everybody stayed late, including M&J. They were here well beyond their regular bus runs. All of our van drivers, nobody complained. Nobody said they couldn't do it. Everybody canceled their plans for the afternoon to make sure that they could support what was an emergency situation here. I can't thank them enough. It would have been very complicated if the bus drivers and others had said, my work day is done, I'm going home. I don't know what we would have done. I didn't hear a peep out of everybody. Everybody understood that it was a challenging situation and helped us through it. So it was a great community response. I want to thank Tricia, central office staff, everybody who stayed late. People were realizing that this was an out in the ordinary circumstance. Not one person abandoned ship on us until it was safe and we were back to a place where we could do so. That was extra hours, extra time away from family, beyond the contractual workday. I so appreciate everybody staying. Everybody played a critical role in supporting our communication and our efforts. So thank you to everybody who was a part of that response. All of our families and our students were amazing. Right. Everybody cooperated, everybody understood. Liam, you were there. I know that everybody responded. It wasn't fun. You were here late. You were here beyond the school day. Not one complaint. Not one student, talk about regulating emotions, right? Not one student responded inappropriately at all. All of our students were fabulous throughout that event, and our families were very supportive, including providing breakfasts and lunches the next day, and lots of appreciation extended to everybody for seeing us through that. Otherwise, it's not something I hope to ever live through again. It was not fun. It was not enjoyable. It was complicated. Throughout the ordeal, though, everybody did the right thing and managed the situation, and I think we handled it as well as we could. We communicated as much information that we had that was developed in real time, and all things considered, there's a reason why we have our plans. There's a reason why we are all trained and we all respond in the way we did. And that in this crisis, I think everything worked as well as it could have. So I wanted to make sure that I shared that appreciation with you, and of course through you to everybody who was involved in it.
I don't want to rain on your parade, but the only way that I knew this was happening was I came to the school at about 2 o'clock to meet Liam for the, I was invited to the club for UN, Model UN. I got to the driveway and was turned away by a policeman who said there was a lockdown. I don't know how other board members knew about it, but I did not know about it until 2 o'clock when things had been going on for a couple of hours. I wasn't upset, it gave me a chance to do some other things, but I was kind of concerned that I wasn't aware of
Are
it.
you getting the Parent
until-
Square alerts?
I don't believe that I am.
I don't think
Did
any
you?
of us got them. I didn't get one.
No.
either.
And I-
Yeah, I was surprised, frankly, that we had.
Well, that's interesting. I'm glad you told me that, because
Yeah.
when I sent out the Parent Square alert, I checked board members and
Actually, I saw it on
parents
Facebook. I
and
saw the note
students
on
and
Facebook.
everybody.
is
So,
where-
okay,
where
well,
I
that's
saw it
good
after I
feedback.
went looking for
Tricia,
it, so.
didn't I text you about, I emailed you about that, right? And then you added me to some,
So just not to rain on your parade.
No, no,
but
that's
it was
good-
fine.
good
about the
information,
lessons
yeah.
learned, right?
He said, everything's under
Good word.
control, we're good. I said,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, well, I'll make sure that you're
I'm
you're
waiting for
getting,
the
are you
invite.
getting the emails I send to the community with
I got
reflections
the
and
email you
updates?
sent
Yeah.
out to the community.
Yeah, I think I saw
But
it.
I don't think I
at
got a
6.
separate.
After.
I didn't,
Yeah,
it was
Sorry.
after the
everything.
fact.
You
It
should've
was
got-
like 5,
I only
6:30 or
received
whatever.
one after the fact.
Okay, you should have got them at the beginning of it, in the
Nope.
middle of it,
No.
and at the
Nope.
end of it.
No.
Everybody else did. So, I mean, that's good to know, though.
Yeah,
So
no,
there's some,
no, like I
like-
said, I would have,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have even come down to the school. at
Yeah,
2
no, you're
o'clock.
not,
So,
it's
yeah.
not raining on my parade, it's good information,
Yeah,
but
well, no, I-
definitely all parents, students, faculty were notified at the beginning,
Right.
in the middle.
I mean,
and at
not
the
that board members are gonna do anything, because we're not gonna
Right.
be communicating with the press or anything else, and they were haunting
Right.
all of the people, including Ryan, when I was down at the Board of Ed the next day. They were parked in the lot waiting for people to come by, but just to know about it would just be, and then if neighbors or our constituents were calling, we might have been able to quell some of the social media stuff that went on with people that,
Well, maybe.
took it to another level.
I'll work on it tomorrow.
Thank
Hopefully
you.
you won't get the emergency alert if there's anything Thursday morning with the snow delay, but that may well be the
But
next
that's
time
okay.
I send out
That's
the alert
okay,
to
I prefer
everybody.
that. But
That'll be a good test,
Yeah.
but otherwise,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're
that's
probably not set up in Parent Square the right way. So we'll
That's
make sure.
Okay, just, yeah, because and I know parents had a lot of praise for, and students had a lot of praise for what happened. It was, Enfield had, or one of the correct schools had a similar incident today, so they're calling in, and they're calling in bomb scares, and there's no bomb, but you can't act on, you know.
So are there any other lessons learned from the situation around security or even cell phone uses?
The leadership team and I debriefed. We did have plenty of lessons learned. There were lots of reflections, and
Okay.
a lot of the reflections are unique to the specific circumstances. With respect to cell phones, not too many. Rebecca, did you have another specific one that you wanted to know?
Security.
Well, the primary one is that it worked, right? That our systems worked. Our Navigate worked. Our teachers were all able to lock down their schools. We were able to secure the students. In general, the feedback is, the lesson learned is, it's good things we practice, our systems are in place, and they are effective. Can they be better? Of course.
So if it had been a true event,
It was a true event.
well, I mean, if there was a weapon in the school, or if there was a shooting in the school, were we prepared to, I mean, are all the steps that were taken, would they have had a positive result? I mean, I'm just,
Yeah.
You're asking if
I-
things were handled the way that
Yeah.
they needed to be handled, right?
Yes.
yeah, are there any things that we would be changing or you would be changing based on what we just experienced? That's all I'm asking is, have we taken a moment to reflect, and are we going to change anything as far as our policies or our procedures or?
No, I think all of our procedures and policies work. I need to be clear, this was not a drill.
Yeah.
This was a real response,
Right.
a real police presence, a real lockdown that took us 4.5 hours to respond to, including determining that there was no weapon in school,
Right.
right? This was not a practice. This was a real response.
Right.
If it had been a situation where there was truly a weapon or truly an act of violence, we would have
Yes.
responded the same way.
Same way.
The outcomes would be a little different. We would be, it wasn't there wasn't a weapon. That's a good thing, right? But if there had been and we had found it, there would have been different levels of I'm sure, media coverage. We would have been communicating differently. Fortunately, in this case, the outcome was different. There was no weapon in the building. The report was not made in good faith.
Have you all had the opportunity, Charles, you and your admin team, to meet with Portland Police in the aftermath and kind of just
multiple times?
Yes, that's kind of I think is that kind of part of what you were getting at?
Parents, students, I mean, are we getting feedback from the students? How did they feel?
Yep, that's
How
we
did
had the whole
parents?
we had the whole crisis team here meeting
Okay.
with students. We debriefed
Okay.
with all of the students. We've communicated with
Okay.
parents. Yes, we've done that, and we've had multiple follow-up with police officers who are also doing a criminal investigation through this, and we have been in conversation with them as this gets wrapped up. The nice thing I will also say, part of what made this so smooth, I think, is that East Hampton, when they had their incident,
Yeah, a couple weeks before.
3 of our police officers responded to East Hampton and were there throughout that event, experiencing that in real time. They came back, and between East Hampton's event and our event, we had lockdown drills in our schools with the Portland Police present, with the Portland Police who had been in East Hampton present to watch it. They came and learned from East Hampton, watched ours, gave us feedback on ours. Literally 2 weeks before, we had a real one. Does that make sense? So that experience in East Hampton, I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but it equipped our local responders with an insight into what schools do. They then came back and watched what we did in a drill, not a real situation, and gave us feedback about how we could be better. We incorporated that so that when it happened for real, which is what it wasn't a drill, it was real, they were responding in a way that capitalized on their experience in East Hampton and their practice with us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I have a question. Do teachers, have you actually had teachers, without the students, looking at spaces or places? Because I know for me, when I was at Valley View having lockdown procedures, analyzing where am I going? It's a closet and I'm gonna stuff 10 kids in there or 12 kids. Did they look at spaces where people are not gonna be so uncomfortable and so squashed in, and then waiting for somebody to knock on the door and say, all clear, you can come out, kind of thing? A closet that doesn't have an exit or a door or a place that, somebody's gonna get stuck. Have you, and again, that's a safety plan that probably shouldn't be divulged, because then, when you have an active shooter, you have somebody that's going to do some harm, you don't want everybody to know that, but, is that something that would be helpful to teachers and students to know that, if you're here, this is the safe place to go, this is where you need to go, where there's no windows and there's an exit if you need to leave or whatever?
Yes, that's why we do the drills.
Okay.
So, and that includes the lockdown, shelter in place, evacuate,
right,
teachers know where to go, take
Right.
their classes for rally points outside the school, for check-ins, and then if it's shelter in place or lockdown, that, you practice like you play.
Right,
And
exactly.
what my takeaway from Monday was, we had done an excellent job this year practicing.
Of finding where those places are that are safe, that people can
And the
stay.
serendipity of it was that experience in East Hampton, that our first responders went and they brought back to us and helped us even get more dialed in, I think is really part and parcel of what made Monday go as well as it could. Because they knew how to respond from that practice or that real experience in East Hampton and their collaboration with us.
Right.
So, I think if East Hampton hadn't happened, it might have been different. But that East Hampton did happen, both trained the police and us.
And trained you as well.
And then we drilled right after East Hampton in the context of all the swatting and hoaxes that have been going on around the state.
Yeah.
So we were as well prepared for Monday as we could have been.
Okay. I guess that's the question.
Yep.
And so I know you've done some post-processing with your administrative team and with the Portland Police as well. Has there been an opportunity for the full staff at the middle school and the high school to do some processing and some self-reflection and,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
Yep, Kate and Chuck have had faculty meetings, and we've done lots of the discussions and debriefs, and, yes.
Great.
What about the other 3 schools?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah,
They were
we
included
deb-
even though it
Yeah, we
didn't-
debrief after drills, and then, of course, we debriefed after this, which was not a drill, so.
Charles, I'm curious, and maybe it did go out in emails and I missed it, but are there resources you can communicate to families to equip families and parents and caregivers with how to discuss this with their children?
I don't know that I put that out in an email, and I would have to check with Sarah and the principals if they put anything out. Yep, go for it, Sarah. Yeah. And Sarah coordinated our mental health response the next day, so she also was heroic in
Hi.
the response.
So we haven't sent anything specifically, but the day after at the secondary complex, we did have a clinician manning the phones. If parents had called for resource about how to talk to their kids, what to say, what to not say, if they were struggling with anxiety about their kids coming to school or being at school, we didn't receive any parent calls, but we did have a clinician like manning that phone line. So that was how we managed it in the moment. I think Chuck and Kate would better speak to parent concerns since, but we did get that feedback from the clinician that came from East Hampton that was something she wished they did, because they did have a lot of parents calling throughout the day asking those questions, but we didn't here in Portland. But
And I
that
just
was-
wonder if, like, even as the parent of elementary school kids, I'm like, well, okay, what would be some helpful things to say? I know the state has resources because unfortunately we've seen an influx of these events this year. So maybe that's something proactively we could provide to families, just so parents and caregivers feel equipped.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it depends on the age too. I know at Valley View in particular, a lot of the conversations we have around shelter in place are, let's say that one time there was a bear, if you recall, that like wandered around Valley View. We give them the example of, well, what if there were a dog that escaped or a bear that was outside? We might need to shelter in place because someone has to come and remember when the bear came. So we have different age appropriate ways to talk about it. So that's a great suggestion, Sarah. We can certainly look into that.
Okay, thanks, Sarah.
Are there any other questions for Charles?
I was teaching at the time at St. Mary's Faith Formation, which is in essence a school. And if this had been more serious, should there have been some type of communication to that school as well?
Boy, that's a really good question. Maybe that is something that we should consider. I would hope that if there were a threat in the broader community, that the police would be communicating that,
Okay.
right? That would be going, because I don't know every,
Yeah.
parochial or private or homeschooling thing that's happening out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, yeah.
But a good example of that, actually, was it over the summer or earlier in the fall? There was an incident at a church downtown, and the police did do a very good job of getting the word out to the
one at the
library and the
senior
senior
center,
center
yes.
and other community
The police
buildings
then?
in proximity, within the radius of
Okay.
concern.
At the senior
So I think they had some practice.
I think the police would be the key.
They
Yeah.
would.
In that.
They would.
Yeah, they would have
Yeah,
to.
I think you're right.
Okay.
Yeah, that would go out as some kind of
Yeah.
an alert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the students that I had, their parents were receiving these messages. Even a couple of the teachers were also parents of students here at the high school. So they had more information than I did.
Right.
And, it was very troubling. And we
troubling.
went business as usual and continued, but the children were, saying things that I agree, we weren't sure what to say to the children about what was happening because we didn't have enough information, so.
Can you speak to what parents should know? Because I know on social media, parents were going to come up to the school and knock on the door and get their kid out of wherever they were locked down, and ironically, I thought there was a funeral at the Swedish
Yeah.
cemetery when I came by.
A line of
And I thought, what an
cars.
odd time to be having a burial. So little did I know that it was because they were parked over there. But is that helpful to let parents know that there are meeting places that would be designated, and parents would be told where to go to pick up their students or
Yeah,
whatever.
I think what you're describing is a reconciliation, right? If we had to leave the school, right, we have all of that, right? All of our schools have designated places to go if we can't be here anymore. That would have been communicated.
Right. So, and just reassuring parents again that, that you'll be told where to go to meet your children or whatever, so, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I just wanted to say while we're still talking about the response, that I did get an email from you that day, but it says it's through Parent Square, but it was only the email regarding the 2-hour delay for the next day.
Oh, you're kidding.
That was, because I was trying to think, well, where the heck did I hear it? And it was on Facebook, obviously.
Yeah.
I saw it all.
But I was kind of tracking it on Facebook at the time and just,
That tells
But
me
that
that
was the
I was
thing about-
probably not clicking the right thing, as I was in a very stressed state trying to send
no
out
doubt, no
communication.
doubt. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't score you down.
Yeah.
Neither did I.
It was something
Hindsight,
as I was, trying to.
I wonder if there's like a community setting or something that you
Yeah.
could pre-select that would include the Board
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Education
I
as
think
well
it's
as.
a great idea. But
Maybe
I will,
we
I will
can
make
look
sure
into
that the Parent Square is that, and that it was a human error and not a Parent Square error.
And that's an app on the phone as well as on your computer.
on the phone,
So-
yeah, it goes out
So
by-
if I didn't
But it
ever
comes,
download.
you wouldn't need the app, it would, the email you're describing,
just
it
came
came
in
to you
through
by, it would
Gmail.
come to you
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
email.
Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't get that.
Right.
So, all right.
But like I said, we might have another chance to practice this week,
Okay, I
so.
hope not. Maybe for the
Well,
snowstorm.
Snow and not lockdown.
It's snowing
Oh,
at my
yeah.
house.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
It was snowing at my house when I left.
All right. Well, thank you for that update,
Yep.
specific to that incident. I know that.
I have two more very quick ones, though.
Yep, please.
December 11th, coming right up, is our first new capital budget committee. I'm very much looking forward to that. We have a lot of work to do in a relatively short period of time. So I know that committee is now formed, and we have our first meeting date where our chair will be elected. We'll set more meeting dates. I intend to propose a relatively aggressive calendar of meetings if we're trying to hit a second referendum in May. We've got a lot of work to do. As a side note, I did reach out. Fryer is willing to extend their contract. Their rates are reasonable. I've shared that with Ryan Curley, and we're going to make sure that we have their support
Has
with the
that
second.
committee been fully populated at this point? There
I'm
were
not
only 4
sure.
people.
My
that were
understanding is
appointed.
that there will be appointments on Wednesday, I think, at
Oh.
the Board of Selectmen meeting. to-
Tomorrow?
To finish
Yeah.
out. Is that tomorrow?
Is it
Yes,
tomorrow?
it is.
Yes.
Tomorrow, yes. We can translate that to tomorrow.
A committee of 9. I think originally
Right, I think
Ryan
they've got
had said 5, but I
presently
think they upped
appointed,
it to
and
9.
My understanding is they're gonna do the other
Right.
individuals.
Also,
tomorrow.
just a caveat to that, because of Ryan's resignation, he no longer serves with Charles as the
Ex officio.
advisor,
Officiato.
advisory roles.
Meg, can you move that microphone? I'm
Oh, I'm sorry.
having trouble hearing you.
I'm
Oh.
sorry. Just
I
that,
didn't hear either,
I'm
but-
wondering what, I'm wondering what happens now that Ryan has resigned, if, who the deputy select person is, if he would, or.
Well, Ryan's still on board until January 1st.
Right,
So
right.
the meeting on the 11th,
He would
certainly-
still,
He'll be there for that.
Yeah, no, he's still
Okay.
on board and fully
okay.
functioning.
Oh, yeah, no, I
And
understand
even
that.
after he leaves, he's gonna be a resource, for, for like 6 months. He'll be
Okay.
available
Oh.
to the person that steps into the first selectman's position.
Okay, will there be a special election, or will there be a?
Do you want me to get it? I mean, I can.
No, let's,
No.
let's,
Yeah, let's wait,
let's
let's
say
wait.
that, because we have
No.
enough that's
No.
on our
No.
agenda.
Yeah.
But,
Sorry.
but
Because I could give you a long.
Yeah, no,
No.
rest assured that this committee's work will continue.
Will continue regardless.
And they will
Right,
make,
right.
they will make the
That's
rest of the
fine.
appointments
That's fine.
tomorrow, so
Right.
that the
Okay.
committee, my understanding is tomorrow, so that the committee can start as a
Start
fully,
on the 11th,
fully
right,
formed
next
committee.
week.
We will have a committee formed by December 11th, and the date is on the calendar.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, don't forget, put it on your calendars, December 16th, 5 PM, we are having our board retreat.
Yeah.
And not a retreat, a special meeting.
Special meeting, excuse me, thank you.
Yep.
Special meeting for the budget. And then finally, I just wanted to make sure that I take the opportunity to say how much I'm going to miss Ryan. I wish him well, and I wish he were staying a little longer. He's been a good partner, and yeah, I'm going to miss Ryan. I'm glad he's going to stay and be available, but he's done great work with us, and I was sad to hear the news like all of us, but I wanted to make sure that I got it on the record that I'm going to miss him. I think he's a good partner and a good
He has
person.
been a good friend of the board.
All right. Thank you, Charles. I'm going to keep us moving along. Stephanie, you are up next.
This is the authorized spending report through 11/25. Since the last meeting, nothing huge has changed, a few repairs here and there. So really the only things that have gone through have been some salaries, some supply purchases, nothing crazy. I was gonna go into a little more detail, but now I'm seeing that it's 9:10.
I know.
I'm gonna hold off on that. We'll do it at the quarterly report.
Yeah.
But if you have any questions about any of the line items, I have all these notes too of things.
Is there anything you wanted to highlight for us in particular?
Not really, because it's still so early in the year, I made some notes about stuff, but it wouldn't really make sense right now. Like one of the things was for the medical line, 21011. It'll look high, because if you remember, the budget was approved when we had 12.6 budgeted in there, but then it went down to 9.9. So we never changed it, and it stayed at the 12.6, but, so the expenses will always look less, so that's why there's gonna be a larger number there, but we don't encumber those, so it's not really, it's kind of not important at this point, but as it gets closer to the end of the year, when you're seeing what's available, like that account will show more, and it's not for any reason other than the budget is higher than what the expenses are because of what happened after it was approved.
Right.
And that goes to show with the whole budget transfer thing, if we were able to do budget transfers, I could have done that.
I know, right?
I know, right?
We're working on it.
We'll get there.
And the
We'll
same
get
thing
there.
in the extra, the coaching salaries. That's where we had the pay for play, and then we took the pay for play out, but I couldn't move the money because already approved. So that's going to look $40,000 over when it got moved in other accounts.
Okay.
So those are just a few notes that I wrote.
Any questions for Stephanie?
Just, if nobody else wants to go
Yeah, go ahead.
first, just that on account 73012, and you've talked about this before, that's the van, is that right?
That's the
Okay,
van.
I'm sorry, I just didn't compare my notes with a lot, and then just popped in my head as I said it.
Yep.
Okay, that's where that came from.
Maybe a similar question on tuition to private sources, 56003.
That's our outplacement, right?
Yeah, so
Expected.
we're already, will that be offset by ECS?
Yeah, so
Got it,
when we get the
thanks.
excess cost, then that's usually towards the end of the year.
Okay.
And right now, we're at about 492,000. So we will be a little over because of that threshold and having to pay for up to, 96,000, whatever it is now. So
98.
we'll always technically be in a negative because we went in with the budget lower than where we were at.
Yeah.
But also we've been doing good this year with, people coming back, people graduating. So as POs get closed, that should kind of flat out, I think, a little bit as the months go on.
Thanks.
Great, good questions. Anything else? Thank you, Stephanie. Don't go anywhere. Director of Student Services, Sarah.
All right, hi, I will go really quick. Nothing big to report here. Like I usually stop each section and see if there's questions about the portion of the report. Our general numbers are looking, typical for this time of year. I did highlight that we have one additional student slated for outplacement. I highlighted it because it is an increase of one, but we do have a student that is graduating from his program in December. So it'll go back down to 20 for next month. There's a couple weeks of timing in between those things. So I wanted to accurately report that we're at 21. I have a student who's graduating right before December break, so we'll be back at 20. So that'll kind of balance out. As far as our other numbers, total IEPs, pending identification, ELLs, those are really typical for this time of year. Nothing big to report there. As far as hiring goes in our department, as we spoke about last meeting, we are interviewing for an occupational therapist. We actually interviewed 5 candidates on Monday. So we are going to move forward, with that candidate pool and next steps. So that was exciting to see that we got a really nice candidate crop. We were concerned initially of who we would get. We had 6 total applicants, 5 of which were strong candidates to interview, which was lovely. We do have a posting for the 7 through 12 clinician with Sarah Paolela sadly resigning, and we have interviews slated for next Tuesday with some candidates. So we're moving quickly on those positions. Any questions about enrollment and hiring?
Has there been a good candidate pool for the clinician position? Do you
Yes.
anticipate being able to fill that pretty readily?
Yes, I do.
Great.
As far as other just, district-wide initiatives, it's kind of the year of the audit. You guys have probably heard me talk about audits 10,000 times. We're auditing all of our different evaluation and testing materials between all of the schools. There's some that are in some schools, and then people at other schools don't know we have them, so they want to reorder them. So we're just auditing and making a central document of where every test is, how many protocols we have, who has it, who to reach out if you need it, so they're not double ordering. We're just kind of centralizing that process, which has been nice. We've done some training with staff. We've had a couple additional folks trained on the ADOS, which is an autism assessment that we use that we needed, which was lovely. And then our speech language pathologist, I know we've spoken about her doing AAC evaluations for students who use things like iPads to communicate. She's done too. She's attended some free PD through NEAT to do that, and she's excited about building that in district. Any questions about those initiatives? Nope. Nothing too exciting. School security, I know we just spoke about it, but kind of serendipitously, right before the lockdown did happen, all of our traveling staff between buildings are typically special education staff. I did do a security audit with all of them to make sure they had lockdown keys, the Navigate app, fobs. That was done in the beginning of November, and with our CHC clinicians, because they are also in our buildings. So that was all ready to go. It was really kind of lucky that that happened how it did. They all felt, that they were glad they had had that conversation prior to happening to make sure they had keys, they had fobs, they had everything they needed, so we knew where they were. Again, special thank you to CHC, the state, East Hampton Public Schools, and just our clinical and guidance staff have really stepped up in that incident. That was wonderful. As far as PD, paraprofessionals had some training on conference days. We got Securely training, which is our computer lockdown training. So if kids are on Chromebooks, you can monitor what they're on and close things down if they're not supposed to be on, games when they're working. Paras advocated that they wanted some training on that because a lot of times they're the one assisting teachers. So they had that training on those days and collaborated with case managers. As far as transportation, things are going well with our vans. I'm sure you've seen them around town. We're using them now when we can to offset costs of field trips, which is nice in our district. So field trips are a little more accessible to students who need them. So typically, if our special education students require a minibus to go on a field trip, we have to contract a minibus for the day. Now, if we're able to, if it's 5 or less kids, we can put them on our minivan. We did get some booster seats, so we can use that for Valley View field trips. So when they went to Star Hill Farm, we were able to put the boosters in the van and get them there. So that was nice. And a thank you to our van drivers again. I wanted their names included here, Bill, Luis, and Michael, who are per diem contractors for us. They all work other jobs. They don't just work for Portland, and they stayed, when we called them, they all stayed way past their hours to make sure all those kiddos got home. So thank you to them. Any questions on professional development, school security, things like that? No? All right.
For Sarah?
All right.
No.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Sarah.
for a very complete report.
Yeah, agreed. Excellent. We're going to move on to new business, and the first item of discussion is setting a graduation date for the class of 2025, and we'll welcome back Kate Lawson, who I believe has a request for a date for the board.
Very exciting.
Yes, please. Our currently calendared last day of school is Friday, June 13th, and it is my request that we set graduation for the class of 2025 for 6 p.m. on that day.
And I would only add that Cindy Hickey, who's been working on coordinating Project Graduation event to coincide with the graduation date, has secured a location, a facility for Friday the 13th, and is wholeheartedly excited and asking the board as well for our support for that date.
She is. They will be attending, I had to write this down, the Extreme Play Adventure Park, the #1 source for thrills and arcade in Danbury. Now you know.
#1, huh?
Danbury's variety.
Are there any questions about setting a graduation date? Nope.
I don't know, man. Friday the 13th.
Don't let it rain.
It didn't click with me until you said it that way.
Yeah. It'll be a memory. If there are no questions, is someone willing to make a motion?
I make a motion, we set graduation date in 2025 for June 15th.
January.
Yes.
Thank you, Tim. Seconded by Kim. Any further discussion? Nope.
It's like 4 Fridays.
Hearing
It's
none.
this year.
All in
Oh,
favor?
this Friday.
Aye.
December 13th.
Graduation date is set for June 13th. Thank you, Kate. We're gonna keep it moving. The next item is approval of a building use application request. So I'm gonna ask Dr. Britton to talk us through this one.
Sure, so you do have a request from the Diocese of Norwich. They would like to use our facilities for a basketball tournament. And again, so a little revenue source for us. Has been reviewed by Ms. Lawson, has been reviewed by Bob Shea. We can provide the facilities and are willing to rent them to the Diocese of Norwich for their basketball tournament. Would need you to approve that, though.
Are there questions for Charles about this request?
No, but I see they're using the new forms, and that's
Yeah,
good.
new forms, and new rates too that we approved, so.
Thanks
Updated
to
rates,
Tricia for updating those things.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the Diocese of Norwich building use application for basketball tournament.
I'll second. Seconded by Angela. Any further discussion? Nope. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right, we're cruising now, guys. Here we go.
We've got momentum.
We've got momentum. Here's item C. It's a policy, it's a first reading, policy 5141.5, suicide prevention. The policy committee discussed this, vetted it, felt it was worthy bringing to the board. Did you want to say anything about it, Meg?
No, just that I think we went through it, we had it reviewed by Sarah, and there's a regulation attached to it as well. And I think we can, to say with all surety that this will be the new policy.
Yeah, so it's a first read tonight. Just to let you know, instead of redlining, we just decided as a policy committee to do the full rip and replace. The primary difference are two things. One, there's a new suicide number that we need to make sure that we're articulating to our students to contact that number if there is any concern about suicidal ideation. And then also, we needed to work with Sarah to make sure there's a screening, right? That in the policy, it's a universal screening that our clinicians use to help if we have a concern about a student. We needed a little bit of time to make sure that we're using that. I see Sarah nodding now that we are in compliance with the policy. So as opposed to redlining it, we just figured a full rip and replace. But those are the two big changes, that suicide hotline and the screening that all of our clinicians are using that is on the state approved list.
Correct.
Are there any questions about the policy?
I had two questions. I think the language related to DCF differs between the critical situation and I think the potential suicide situation. In one, let's see.
You're looking at the regulation?
This is the proposed policy, I believe, unless it says regulation somewhere and I didn't quite.
The regulation's at the bottom of the
Yeah,
page.
but ask your question, that's all
sorry.
right.
Okay.
I
And
just making sure I was
both
finding
of
the
my
right spot.
questions are about regulation, and I know we're not approving, or maybe this is
That's
still.
okay.
open.
Ask your
You still have
questions.
questions.
Yep.
I'd be interested in your questions.
So my questions are, let's see, under critical situation, in 3, I believe it says the principal may inform parents that the student, no, sorry, that was not it. Principal will explain the school may be required to file a medical neglect report with DCF. And then under potential, under 3E, if a parent refuses to come to school, principal will explain the school should file. So I don't know why there's a discrepancy between the two.
In other words, may or should?
Yeah, because it seems like either one should be the same language, or the critical situation should even be the more forceful language. So that was one question I had about the regulation. And then the other was the, and again, I guess I just never read this regulation because it hasn't come up, the policy hasn't come up for review since I've been on the board, but there was somewhere requesting the student to sign an agreement that they will not harm themselves. This was under potential suicide situation number 2. Principal or designees will ask the student to sign an agreement not to harm himself, herself. It seems like the evidence is inconclusive on the value of such a thing. So that's why I was just kind of curious, like, Is that what CABE recommended?
So what's the section and what
This
is
is the
your
CABE, yeah,
question?
it's the CABE
And we can
policy.
go back to
CABE
Sarah if we
policy.
have to.
Yeah,
can I
potential suicide situation 3E. No, 2, yeah, number 2.
Right,
It-
yeah, it's just a sign of agreement, that's not an unusual.
I guess I wonder, what is the purpose of that? Because if you have a student who's already like expressing suicidal ideation, why, like, address the need? Why would you ask them to sign an agreement that they won't harm themselves? Like, what's the purpose of that? I'm not.
I'm sure there's a lot of material out there about that.
Well,
don't
I
have it
looked
in
up some, and it said
Yeah.
there actually isn't really conclusive evidence that this
But I
is
think it's more of a
helpful in that
practice thing.
situation.
You know,
So
this
that
is a
was,
matter of.
again,
standard
we're not
practice.
approving the
Right.
regulation, but those were 2 questions that I had before realizing that that's the regulation, not the policy.
If that's all right, is that something that you and Sarah want to
You want,
touch base about?
You
or
want to
Sarah?
touch base? Great. The question is, let's not now. I mean, it's
Yeah,
only,
yeah,
it's
this-
only
yeah.
first read.
This is the
But
first
for the
read.
second read, we'll answer the questions, the difference between should or may, and then the question about, is it best practice to have students sign something saying they won't commit suicide?
Thank you.
And can I interrupt for a second? Liam, I'm noticing the time. Our friends over here have been told that they could be dismissed. If you have homework or it's getting late for you,
Yeah.
you're welcome to go, otherwise you're welcome to stay.
It's
I was reminded
9:30.
by our high school
almost
principal
9:30.
that it's getting late, so. It's up to you.
Yeah, I should be able to sit through the rest of it.
Okay.
Grit and bear it.
So we'll get that for the second read.
Thanks, Charles.
Yeah.
Any other questions? If anything comes up between now and our next meeting, feel free to send questions to Charles. But we will revisit that in January. All right, item D, fiscal year 2024 fourth quarter transfers.
Here's our yearly transfers. The backup attached is the backup that goes with each one of the line items, that's being increased or decreased. There wasn't much this year. I tried to pick the biggest accounts that I could. I don't know if everybody that's been on the board since the last year, but just a brief overview. So every year, around the time that the auditors come, we have to make sure that all of our all of our programs aren't negative.
Gotta
So,
balance the books.
huh?
Gotta
Right.
balance the books.
So we can't end with a negative in each of the 100, 102, 103, the locations. So I have to go through and I pick accounts that are reasonable enough to either increase or decrease to offset and make them positive. And then that's the entry I would do, and then that's kind of the net impact on it. And that's the piece that you guys would need to approve.
Everyone
What
understand?
about the other services is increased by 182,000? What's
So-
that all about?
So that's the, so like if you look at my.
That's where the deficit was.
Right, that's where the deficit was the most, so if you look
This
like
is a
here.
clerical activity.
It's Tim's favorite clerical
Tim's
activity.
So see all these, you see that's how a large negative? So that's the biggest one that I have to increase, and so I'm decreasing the other accounts that are all positive to make this one whole.
Okay.
So this is correcting for the last fiscal year.
Right.
To essentially sort it so that none of the major accounts will show in the negative, just based on actual spending.
Okay.
Are there questions? And if not, is someone willing to read the full thing?
I'll recommend to the full board.
Thank you, Meg. I knew you'd take
You did it last year too.
The-
one for the team.
For the fiscal year 2024, fourth quarter budget transfers between the major objects listed below. The object is the 5-digit code at the end of the full account number. Salaries are being decreased by $75,007.58. The object is 11011-12023. Benefits are being decreased by $96,602. The object is 21001 to 29000. Purchase services are being decreased by $6,754.13. The object is 30010 to 33030. Other services are increased by $182,833.93. The object is 51010 to 56003. Equipment is being decreased by $4,470.22. The object is 73011 to 73015.
Thank you, Meg. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Sarah. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any abstentions? Any objections? Motion carries.
Objection, did you call it objection?
Well, I just wanted to make sure. I generally can see all the hands, but if I scan and I don't see all the hands, then I just want to give everyone an opportunity. All right, we do not have any old business this evening, so we're going to move on to committee reports. Curriculum has not met since our last meeting. We are setting a date for December, and we'll share that out once it's settled. Policy.
1211 coming up.
And personnel also hasn't met since our last meeting. We're meeting tomorrow, so we'll have something to report back on. Buildings and grounds.
Met on 11/25, and we had a healthy discussion about capital improvements and other issues that are facing our middle school and high school, with a good update on how we proceed with the capital fund committee that has been established. So it was a good, healthy discussion, and we'll look forward to some budget items coming out of that.
Thank you.
Correct, there's no meeting this month. There's a policy meeting on December 18th for CREC.
Board of Selectmen.
Most of it was around that new committee for the strategic capital. We've already discussed it, so.
Yeah, okay. Youth Services Advisory.
Just looking forward to the Christmas parade. Decorate your cars and come on down and light the tree, and we'll listen to the high school band and chorus singing during that event on December 7th.
I heard they need cars for the parade.
I
Are they
heard
still
they
looking
need
for
cars.
cars?
They're looking, they're recruiting actively
I hope the
people
high
to
school kids decorate their
throw some
cars.
lights on your
Yeah,
cars
yeah.
and participate.
Yeah, come on down.
Equity and Inclusion Coalition.
We met in November and continued discussing a definition of civil discourse and a framework that would inform how we undertake civil discourse as a school district. And we are narrowing in on definition and framework. So when are we meeting in January? At our next meeting.
At our next
We're
meeting, yeah, every other month, so yeah. I don't
going
have the
to
date, but-
hopefully land the definition and
Yeah.
framework.
Yeah, it's been a good, I like what we're doing this year with the model we're using. And the students have been engaged, which has been great.
That's great.
And, yeah, I think it's been a beneficial activity.
Yeah, and kudos to Eric and Stephen who are co-facilitating us.
Did you either of you guys save that dignity scale? Maybe you could share that with them, that
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely. I have
that
copies.
would be
I have extra
perfect
copies.
for a civil
Tim,
discourse
and
conversation.
there's also a video of Tim Shriver giving
We'll get you a
the,
cool
keynote. We'll get
resource
this-
that we saw.
Yeah, you guys should look at that.
I thought that was neat.
Yeah, the civility scale is really awesome. Good point.
Yeah, I do have a copy of that for sure. Thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on to audience of citizens. Do we have anyone with us in person who wishes to address the board? You're welcome to come on up. Just state your name. We appreciate that. Just state your name and address for the record.
Since I stayed the whole time, I may as well speak. Karen Renner, Penfield Hill Road. So just in regards to the SEL study that's being proposed, I've spoken with a few of you. I spoke to Kate today about my concerns, and I wrote a letter to the Board of Ed. I just want you to be sensitive to how the parents will feel, speaking of feelings, about taking charge, if you will, taking charge of their kids' emotions. And I don't mean taking over their emotions, but proposing the SEL. And I was actually a little bit taken aback when I found out that there's already an SEL program in place. and I asked about how that was communicated to the parents, and it was in a newsletter. So I don't think that's appropriate either. I think parents should be notified better so that they can appropriately research for themselves what it's about and ask questions. Just those couple of things, and just please consider my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone online who wishes to address the board? Nope. Okay. Board of Education member comments. Should start with you.
I'm good.
No. Okay. Sarah?
Just wishing everybody happy holidays as you go to celebrate.
Angela?
Liam, have a great time in New York.
Yeah.
Be safe. Enjoy the show. It sounds wonderful.
It does sound wonderful.
Merry
Liam?
Christmas, everyone.
Yeah. Very long meeting tonight.
Yeah.
But it was certainly a very interesting day to hear about the future programs for SEL. I know what we currently have. It's not the best.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Tim?
Oh, I think we've all said enough. But, yeah, I think
Fair.
good meeting, a lot of good discussion.
Yeah.
I just want to echo Charles about the lockdown, that I am very appreciative on the parent end of it. It was, a stressful event, but I think everybody did great communicating when they could, how they could, and everybody handled it very well, very appreciative. Educators don't sign up for this when they become educators, so I'm very thankful for everybody.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, I'm thankful too. I will share a video from CREC about the Farmington Valley Diagnostic Center that is available for outplacement of students, and I'll share that with Charles, and you can share that with the staff. Also, CABE, I was at the leadership conference today with a new board track and a seasoned member track. It was free to anybody that wanted to participate, which was always interesting. That was through a grant that the Department of Education gave to CABE. And professional development is for new board members who have been appointed within the last 1.5 to 2 years. So, and I know some of you have taken advantage of it. CABE is in Region 8, which is like Middlesex County and the shoreline. They have a legislative breakfast coming up on the 18th of December, which is at 8 o'clock in the morning at Westbrook High School, and that's when we will talk about the legislative agenda, which CABE just worked on. And our conference was championing our schools through a unified voice, and we are going to collaborate with CAPS, which is the Superintendent Association, and also with CREC to make sure that we are being heard as board members to the legislature this year. They're already gearing up for another booming year of mandates, and so we want to make sure that we're heard. I did participate in a press conference with the New Haven Board of Education and a whole lot of kids from Future Farmers of America and other dignitaries, and everybody spoke to the excess cost grant, which is not a fairly divided funding way for special education, and that is going to be one of the things that we're going to talk about. The school finance, the state school finance project was the host for the press conference, and we want to be unified in making sure that we have equity and also adequate funding for special education in the state. So more to come, but everybody needs to be part of that voice. And that's all I have to say. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everybody. We'll see everybody on the 16th, but hopefully you're getting ready for a wonderful holiday with your families.
Thanks, Meg. All right. I don't have anything to add other than thanks for a good meeting and for hanging in there. And Liam, thank you for hanging in there. That was a long one. So I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season, and see you on the 16th.
And now we have to
And is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Yeah.
Is there a second? Seconded by Meg. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks,
And
everyone.
If we don't hurry up and get out of here.
we can get out of here before the alarm.
Charles will have
I know, we got no time. Go quick.
Charles will be setting the alarm.
So they would have. So this number are these
Together.